Like, subscribe and share Tree Fanfiction audiobook channel for next part. Chapter 89. Kakudo landed lightly on his feet, perfectly avoiding the bloody thorns that awaited him around him. Looking around, it was dark. The inside of the thorn mountain was not ordinary black, even he didn't know what was hidden in the depths of the darkness. Have you come? I've been waiting for you for a long time. A voice came from the darkness, and the horns turned their heads vigilantly, and a red figure emerged from the darkness. It was Momiji, and he appeared in front of Kakudo with such a swagger, as if he had expected to wait here. Jiaoda frowned slightly, and said, "It seems that you already knew that I would enter from here." Naturally. Momiji didn't intend to explain the principle to Kakudo, he didn't want to explain, and there was no need for that. The two glanced at each other, and they both saw the killing intent in each other's eyes, and the horns took a big leap back and instantly distanced themselves from the red leaves, and the masked monster on the body came out at the same time. Fire escape, head hard. The fire masked monster opened its mouth and released a large area of red flames like a sea of fire, and after landing on the ground, the range expanded again, and the sweeping flames seemed to burn everything away. I know that these ninjas will choose to use fire escape to deal with him. Momiji's face turned dark, and he couldn't understand why the ninja always thought that a fire escape could burn his thorns. He's not what he was 3 years ago. A large number of blood-red thorns suddenly appeared in the sea of fire, and the blood-colored sea instantly covered the entire sea of fire, and the flames were like toys that shattered at the touch of a touch in front of them. Jiaoda looked at the crazy spread of blood thorns, and his eyes were solemn. Although he had expected it, he couldn't help but tremble when he saw this number of thorns. The fire masked monster and the wind masked monster melted into his shoulders, one left and one right, stitched together with black thread. In the next moment, wind escape, crushing, and fire escape, head hard were released at the same time, and with the help of wind escape, the more powerful sea of fire quickly rushed towards the blood thorns. This time, the head was hard and powerful, and the advance of the blood thorn was completely contained, but the horns were still solemn. He found that the flames only temporarily stopped the thorns from moving, but did not completely burn them. As soon as the flames are extinguished, the thorns will regain their activity and return to their original form. 8 huge black lines like a woman's long hair split from Kakudo and shot like arrows at the red leaves standing at the end of the thorn swarm. The horns were stunned, only to see that the red leaves pierced by the black lines turned into a wooden sculpture in the blink of an eye, like a child's toy. Where is the main body? The horns are all ready to unleash their ninjutsu, cautiously looking around, trying to find the hidden Momiji in this boundless darkness. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the dirt, grabbed Kakuto's ankle while he was unprepared, and jerked him into the ground. What? His entire leg was completely stuck in the middle of the dirt, and he really didn't expect Momiji to attack from underground. Doesn't it mean that the other party will only control all kinds of thorny battles? Realizing that his eyes were blinded by intelligence, Kakuto's face became even darker, and he was gloomy and could drip water. With the strength of a few black lines, he quickly pulled his leg out of the ground, but the sensation of his body tearing stopped him from moving. A strong wind blew from behind him, and a sharp thorn pierced his chest, and Momiji squinted slightly, and pulled out the thorn sword in his hand. It's over. Momiji's voice was calm, as if everything was under his control. It's over? Kakuto asked rhetorically, then turned his head sharply and struck at Momiji with his uninjured body. Momiji hurriedly retreated, a trace of doubt flashing in his eyes. A normal human heart should be dead if it is pierced. Why is this guy not only not dead, but still full of energy, and his movement is not restricted by the wound at all? A string of black threads in the shape of hair appeared in an instant, wrapping around Momiji's body, and Kakuto himself followed closely in front of him. Poof! His arm with black thread pierced Momiji's heart in an instant, and he took the beating heart in his hand. I haven't tried the demon's heart yet. Not. Noticing Momiji's idiot-like expression, Kakudo excitedly transplanted Momiji's heart into his own body, replacing the heart that had been pierced by Momiji. Momiji directly gave up struggling, and just looked at Kakuto in silence. Suddenly, a mutation occurred. The black lines in Kakuto's body instantly danced uncontrollably, and they rushed out of him one after another. Kakuto himself fell into a frenzy, covering his face with his hands, his fingers almost snapping out his eyeballs, and the whole person staggered back, and his mouth kept moaning in pain. No one controlled the black line, and Momiji was automatically untied, and he moved his limbs that were strangled to pain. What an idiot! The body tissue of the ghost dares to move. He didn't know what to say anymore. He was going to use 70% of his strength to fight the other party, but he committed suicide before he started. What is it called? The mutation here is still happening, and the real Bao Shuichi, who is thousands of miles away, suddenly stopped, as if he sensed something, and looked in the direction of the Thorn Mountain. Why is there an inexplicable ghost in the city? If you look closely, it is still a famous horn capital. Chapter 90. At night, the moon hangs high. True Baoshiu wore a hat and came to the entrance of Konoha village. Looking up at this incomparably familiar door, he didn't expect to be able to return here one day. But not as a true Bao Shuichi. Rather, as a ghost king. Before he could sigh a few more minutes, there was a sharp sound in front of him. Stop! What people? They. Two gatekeepers in front of him blocked his way, and Shuichi Mayumi didn't look up, but just calmly passed by them, and the pipe whip stretched out behind him knocked the two shinobi out in just a moment. The cells were destroyed so quickly that they couldn't even make a sound, and they lost all life. As the distance gradually decreased, his perception of the lower string ghost gradually increased. It's just why, he sensed that all those ghosts were gathered underground? What kind of buildings could there be under Konoha village? Fortunately, he brought the red leaves, and if there were red leaves, it would not be difficult to dig Konoha 3 feet into the ground. Don't look at him alone, passing through the main entrance of Konoha alone. In fact, the other ghosts are hidden in the cascading space of mirrors and shadows, preparing for a grand performance. Before he could go any further, several ninjas stepped forward to stop him, and even a familiar face among them. A black mushroom-headed, green tight-clad physical ninja Maidkai. He wasn't interested in Naka Shinobi, but if it was a famous figure like Maidkai, he wouldn't mind turning it into one of the aides in the attack on Konoha village. Today, he came with the determination to destroy Konoha village. The more helpers, the better. When Konoha's reinforcements arrived at the entrance of the village, they only found the corpses of ninjas lying in pools of blood on the ground, as well as the culprit who had disappeared without a trace. Upon hearing this, Konoha immediately sounded the first-level alarm, and the entire village was mobilized. The preparations for war, the refuge of refuge, even the people in their sleep were woken up and hurriedly got up to pack their things. Shuichi Mayumi stood on the street, and the people around him hurried by as if they didn't see him. He uses his blood magic to confuse the 5 senses of humans, making them unaware of his presence, allowing them to swagger down the streets. Enemy attack, called from afar. Seeing the thorny dragon rising into the sky, he knew that it was the red leaves that they had done, and the entire Konoha would definitely experience a bloody storm next. With the thorns of Momiji as cover, Shuichi Mako successfully found the hidden entrance to the roots. If there is anything in Konoha underground, his first reaction is the roots, this shady organization built underground. Whether those ghosts are in the roots or not, you will find out. I didn't expect this day to come so soon. Tuanzang walked in the dark passageway, the corners of his mouth hooked into an evil smile, and his eyes were full of ambition. Unleash that monster! With his command, the surrounding root ninjas instantly mobilized, and several people worked together to open the metal iron door in front of them. Behind the door was an extremely empty experimental area, where countless chains bound a teenager in the center. This boy was the raw material of the crow poison that he had taken from him, and when he sealed many ghosts, they immediately started experiments, trying to attach all the abilities of multiple ghosts to him and create a one-time humanoid weapon. The final result cannot be said to be a success, but it is not a failure either. First of all, they succeeded in transplanting the power of the demon, and now the boy has become a completely artificial demon, possessing more than a dozen blood ghost spells. But it's a pity that this boy is completely irrational and has completely turned into a crazy monster, and he lost a lot of root ninjas in order to suppress him. Now he stayed here obediently only because he hadn't eaten for a long time, and he had released the bloodless demon magic. Otherwise, even if he only has 50% of his strength, these chains will not be able to trap him, and the beast will definitely break through the cage. And most importantly, the only thing that makes this artificial demon different from those wild demons. He was not controlled by anyone, and no one could control his life with a single thought, including the rumored Ghost King. Following Danzo's orders, the ninja of the root first put special handcuffs and leg cuffs on the boy before proceeding to break the chains locked in his bones. During the whole process, the young man remained motionless, watching those ninjas do his hands and feet on him. Even if his body was already drenched in blood, his expression did not change in the slightest. He had always glared at Tuanzang. Tuanzang didn't care about his eyes, stepped forward and took out a tube of green injections from his body, and raised his hand to pierce the young man's neck. As the liquid was injected, the expression on the boy's face gradually became hideous, and the whole person began to struggle violently, and several ninjas could barely hold him down. If you are injected with this, you will not live long. Tuanzang threw the air traffic control in his hand. Take him to the ground, remember to let him eat. Let's just use the corpses of the dead subjects. Tuanzang has thought about it. Once this monster is free, it will be impossible to recover it. This is a disposable weapon. In order to prevent him from threatening himself, this medicine was specially prepared, and as long as it was injected into his body, the cells in his body would begin to fail after 30 minutes. Will be completely dead after 50 minutes. Sending the monster away, Danzu walked alone in the passageway, preparing to return to his office, sitting back and watching the show as he did on the day of the Nine Tails Rebellion. But halfway through, he met a figure wearing a hat. He knew very well that there was no such person in the roots, so the identity of the person who came was self-evident. I didn't expect those ghosts to have infiltrated here, but you're out of luck to meet here. Tuanzang smiled slightly, and the crutch in his hand slammed into the wall, and a brick was dented inward. In an instant, the entire passage was lit up, and it was full of purple light as far as the eye could see. This device has been experimented with by himself, but it is not a portable ultraviolet flashlight. Compared to this, the flashlight can only be regarded as a toy. Shuichi Mako unexpectedly felt the scorching heat of ultraviolet rays shining on his body, and hurriedly mobilized the power of the dragon veins in his body to cover his body and block the irradiation of ultraviolet rays. I didn't expect Danzang to be able to install ultraviolet devices in a large area in the channel of the roots. How rich is it? He reasonably suspected that this facility had embezzled public funds from Konoha. After all, it was a place where evil spirits were imprisoned, and it was reasonable to decorate ultraviolet lamps, right? Fortunately, he himself came to liberate those ghosts, and it was probably dangerous to change them. The person in front of the meeting did not move at all under the ultraviolet rays, and there was no sign of imminent spontaneous combustion, and Tuanzang couldn't help frowning. Isn't the person in front of him a ghost? Otherwise, why aren't you afraid of ultraviolet rays? The ultraviolet lamp seems to be turned on in vain. Chapter 91. Shimura Danzo, long admired daimyo. The voice of the words reached Danzang's ears, and Shuichi's whip approached at the same moment. 10 minutes at most, and he had to end the fight. The Uchiha haven't been wiped out yet, and the reserves of the Sharingan are not as many as expected. At most, you have to face the single writing wheel eye of Tuanzang's right eye. Humph! Shimura snorted coldly, having guessed that he would attack suddenly, and jumped back out of the range of the whip's attack. Wind escape, vacuum jade. They. Bullets condensed by the gas continued to fire, and Tuanzang's mouth seemed to turn into a machine gun, tireless. Shuichi yawned, and the whip behind him continued to interrupt the wind escape bullets fired at him at a speed that the human eye couldn't catch. Sure enough, Shimura Danzo, who didn't have a writing wheel eye arm, was too boring. In such a narrow space, it is not easy to summon a huge psychic beast, Dream Taper. Should he turn Danzo into a ghost or not? That was the only question he was thinking about at the moment. The speed of the whip was so fast that Tuanzang could only see the afterimage in the air. His eyes froze, and he reached out and ripped off the bandage on his head, revealing the three-hooked jade writing wheel eye in his right eye. With the inside of the three-hooked jade writing wheels, he was finally able to barely catch the actions of those pipe whips, and pulled out a kunao to his chest. A large amount of wind escape chakra spat out of his mouth, converging on the kunao to form a sharp wind sword. A pipe whip struck him with a sound of breaking the air, and Tuanzang immediately picked up the sword of wind in his hand to resist continuously. Although the Sharingan gave him the ability to see the whip clearly, the continuous attacks still made him blindly defensive, unable to find the slightest opportunity to attack. This is not the case with one pipe whip, not to mention that there are more pipe whips behind Zhengong Zaihui. If all the pipe whips attack him in one go, he will be defeated in an instant. Being able to see the attack clearly does not mean that he will definitely be able to prevent it. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Zhengong Xiu staring at him intently, and he instantly raised his head to look at him, and the writing wheel in his eyes turned wildly. Trying to pull Shuichi Menu into the illusion. But Shuichi Makomi was not affected. Finding the right time for Tuanzang to neglect his defense, Trugong Zaihui immediately controlled the other 8 pipe whips to go into battle and frantically whipped Tuanzang. Tuanzang was constantly retreating, and he was also gradually approaching, never being able to pull out the attack range of the whip. In the first few clicks, Tuanzang was able to reluctantly use the wind blade in his hand with his excellent insight, but he was a little powerless in the back. He can't get close to him anymore. Tuanzang threw the wind blade in his hand, and the collision of the wind blade with several pipe whips barely bought him a few seconds. Seizing this moment, Danzang slammed back, widening the distance between him and Shuichi Shinyu, while unleashing a powerful wind escape ninjutsu to suppress the opponent and prevent him from approaching. Wind escape, vacuum waves. In this small space, several wind escape attacks like a sickle-like completely blocked the two of them, and the wind escape ninjutsu that was constantly being released did indeed stop the pace of Shuichi Trubao. But it was less than half a minute. Tuanzang didn't let him get close, so wouldn't it be over if he also used the blood demon technique to fight against him? The pipe whip is indeed easy to use, but it doesn't have to be close. Trubao Shi raised his hands in front of Danzang, and 2 large mouths were split in the palms of his hands, inhaling the flying scythe storm. Immediately, the number of sickles doubled and was returned to Tuanzang. Blood demon technique, fire roar. The temperature in the passage rose sharply, but in an instant, Danzo was already sweating profusely, gasping for breath, and the speed of releasing ninjutsu was also a little slower. The sharp scythe swept the flames and flew towards Tuanzang, and Tuanzang's heart was horizontal, and he immediately performed psychic skills. As soon as the dream taper came out, it firmly blocked the passage and blocked in front of Danzang, and the scythes that were wrapped in flames all hit the dream taper solidly. Bang! As soon as the dream taper came out, before he had time to take a second look at the world, it turned into white smoke and returned to the psychic world. Tuanzang wiped the sweat drops on his head, knowing that he couldn't release the ninjutsu anymore, and the strange man in front of him actually had the ability to absorb the wind escape ninjutsu. But what other moves could he use to attack besides wind escape? He had just turned his head and ran a few steps, when another true Bao Shuichi came from the corner of the passage opposite, in the shape of two breads. It turned out to be flesh and blood. It seems that he has been prepared. Poof! The pipe whip instantly pierced his body, and Tuanzang fell to the ground and convulsed a few times, out of breath. But the flesh clone did not relax, and when he looked back, Tuanzang's figure appeared in another passage, and he withdrew without looking back. The chakra in his right eye was completely blind. Danzo's goal is to rely on his familiarity with the terrain of the roots, shake off the guy behind him, and go to the ground from the exit. His own men had gone up with the monster, and all that was left underground was a bunch of useless rubbish. As long as you have a helper, it's much easier to deal with that guy. I don't know how long I ran, and when I was about to feel the fresh air, Shuichi Mayumi stopped in front of him again. I knew you would come here, and you have been walking for a long time after such a short circuit. Are you lost? Said with a smile as Zhen Gongxiu smiled and approached the ugly Tuanzang step by step. Later, the flesh and blood clones also chased after them, and the twists and turns that the regiment had just hidden in the base did not stump the other party at all. It's almost time to say goodbye. Shuichi Mayumi stopped and looked at the solace of Tuanzang's feet. The ghost sent the gods, and Tuanzang also lowered his head along the line of sight, and saw the big words under his feet boom. When the firelight instantly illuminated half of his face. Bang! Q was hit by an explosion, and without Izanagi, who could avoid death, he was directly injured by this melee explosion. But the willpower of the tenacious Tuanzang always had a breath, and he pounced on the real Bao Shuichi in front of him like a return to the light, and at the same time, the 4 elephant seals on his body moved. Haha, die with me, he laughed, almost maniacally. That, the one you're holding is a clone. True Gong Shuichi kindly reminded him. Hey! Tuanzang watched in astonishment as the man he was holding in his hand gradually melted and finally turned into a pool of blood. It's too late, the 4 elephant seal has already been activated. Watching Tuanzang try his best to seal a clone, True Gong Zhihui felt a little embarrassed. Flesh and blood clones can be recreated, but Tuanzang is really gone. After dealing with the group, he continued to walk deeper into the roots. After the episode of the group, I think the process of finding the ghosts should be a little easier. Chapter 92. The gloomy pantry was filled with jars and jars of various ceramics, all of which were covered with lids and seals, and the entire jar was covered with black sealing spells. At a cursory glance, I saw more than a dozen ultraviolet lamp devices, and if an evil spirit escaped, multiple devices could be turned on at any time to destroy them in the storeroom. However, Konoha's sealing technique is also really strong, and after so long, not a single sealed ghost has broken the seal. Shuichi Mayumi picked a jar that was close to him, and tore off the seal attached to it, and the whole jar shook violently in an instant. A crack appeared on the jar, and the crack widened, and finally exploded directly. A cloud of black smoke drifted out of it, converging on the ground to form a human figure. A series of figures rushed out of the storage room one after another, and when Shuichi Shinbo unlocked the last sealing jar, the purpose of his trip was achieved. Dusting his hands, he was about to leave the root base when a sound of fighting at the entrance caught his attention. A black figure armed with a short knife was fighting with several demons who had gone out before with his extremely superb phantom teleportation technique. Those few evil ghosts are not the 12 ghost moons, that is, a few ordinary evil ghosts that were liberated together, and there are even those who don't know blood ghost arts. In this way, he was suppressed by the black figure again and again, and he was defeated and retreated. If it weren't for immortality, they would have become a puddle of corpses on the ground. Just as he was surprised by which master it was, Shuichi Shinbo approached and saw the pair of scarlet riding wheel eyes, as well as the very iconic dango nose. If it was him, it would not be surprising that he did know the location of the root base. The corners of True Bao Shuichi's mouth raised slightly. It really didn't take any effort to get it, and it also saved him from going to the Uchiha to stop the water in person. However, he didn't act rashly, but used blood magic to hide himself in the dark, looking for an opportunity to win with one blow. Suddenly, he struck. Seizing an opportunity to turn his back on him, the whip with the power of the dragon vein struck at the back of the water with lightning speed. Smack! The blade brought up a touch of red. Stopping the water rolled out of Shuichi's attack range of the real Bao, and looked at him vigilantly with a short knife in hand. For ninjas with a rebellious physique, such an attack was indeed not enough to make them lose their ability to fight. But the attack of the whip is only a medium, and the real killing is the ghost blood covered in it, which can kill with a single blow. In the next second, Shuichi's face stiffened, his hand loosened, the blade slipped to the ground, and the ghost blood in his body had already reacted. Stop the water, I hope you can surprise me. Referring to the ability of the god of stopping the water, he had great expectations for the blood ghost technique of stopping the water, so he was not in a hurry to go to the ground to see the battle situation in Konoha village. After injecting more demon blood into the water, he stood here like this, watching him transform from a human to a ghost. Spiritism. Ape Demon. With the participation of the Ape Demon, the Konoha village species fought even more inextricably, and the 3 generations of Hokage fought Momiji alone. The destructive power of both men was first class, and within a few moments, the surrounding buildings were destroyed in a large area. Fortunately, the civilian transfer was carried out in advance, otherwise I don't know how many people would have died in these 2 rounds. But in Konoha village, there is not only Momiji who is presumptuous, but the ape flying sun slashing team can serve Momiji, but it is powerless to deal with other ghosts. Suddenly, the entire Konoha village suffered heavy casualties. Roar! A beast's roar soared into the sky, and the penetrating sound reached everyone's ears. An ape Fei Sun Slash was also subconsciously attracted by this sound. Be careful! Don't get distracted! If it weren't for the ape demon's timely reminder, the thorns of the red leaves would have fallen on him. Turning his attention back to the battle with Momiji, Sarutobi was about to release the ninjutsu when he suddenly slammed his body. An extremely huge gravity was attached to him in an instant, and this old bone soon couldn't hold it anymore, and he fell to one knee to support his body. Cold sweat oozed from his forehead. I thought it was Momiji's trick, but when he saw that Momiji was also suffering from huge gravity, he was even more puzzled. Momiji relied on his strong physical strength to barely be able to stand under this gravity, and the doubts in his heart were no less than those of Sarutobi Sun Slash. Gravity? He vaguely remembered that this wasn't the Mirror Twins' blood ghost technique. Why did you even fight with him? Want to rebel? A bloodthorn emerged from the ground to provide support to Momiji. He endured the gravity on his body, raised his eyes and looked around, trying to find the person who used this gravity. Then, he found that this gravity attacked almost indiscriminately, and all living beings within a certain range around him, whether it was humans, ghosts that were messing with him, or even sparrows flying in the sky. At this moment, they were both subjected to the same gravity, and it required a lot of physical strength to bear this gravity alone, and the 2 of them temporarily entered a state of forced truce. While he was in doubt, countless huge metal blades suddenly pierced out not far away, piling up into a mountain of blades. There were several Konoha ninjas who had died tragically on the blades, and several demons who had been injured by mistake struggling to break free from the blades. Blood flowed down those blades, adding a touch of weirdness to the mountain of blades. What is the situation? Sarutobi saw the puzzled look on Momiji's face, followed his line of sight, and also saw this terrifying scene. As soon as he found his way to leave the route, Harazyuxian Chaos Blade saw this scene as soon as he came to the ground, and after a moment of pause, he scolded angrily. Damn, isn't this my technique? The effect is better than his. That's the most embarrassing thing. As soon as he gritted his teeth, the chaotic blade no longer stopped, and ran wildly towards the center of the mountain of blades. His body gradually metallized and became angular as he wrenched, and several blades ejected from the bones. He wanted to see who had stolen his blood demon technique. In the center of the skyrocketing blade, several root ninjas were caught off guard by the blade piercing their bodies and hanging in the air. Although they were already cautious, they underestimated the power of the combined blood demon technique. The gravity of the large area prevented them from escaping in time, and the blade forest ended their lives. The one who unleashed these blood ghost spells was the test subject who had been released from the root before, Takagi. Chapter 93. Gao Hezi left the root base and appeared here, and the first thing he did after regaining his freedom was to go on a killing spree. The long-term inhuman torture and hunger as a demon had gradually distorted his spirit, and what he could not get was always the most precious. He wants to use the lives of everyone here to satisfy his desires, whether it is the ninjas of Konoha or those evil spirits, they are all his hunting targets. No one can escape. Ha 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 ha. Takagi roared to the sky, not paying the slightest attention to a wind of decay that was approaching at an extremely fast speed. Kirihime, as a member of the 12 Ghost Moons, naturally participated in this operation against Konoha as well. She can ignore the gravitational suppression exerted on all living beings in her atomized state, and at this moment, she just wants to eliminate this unstable element as soon as possible. The wind of decay swept through his body, and the maniacal laughter came to an abrupt end, and Gao Hezi looked at his rapidly aging half of his left arm in confusion. Hey! Suddenly, he felt a familiar aura around him. A ghost had unconsciously approached him, and he didn't realize it at all. The spirit that was close to collapse was not enough to support him to calm down and think about the enemy's position, and now he only wanted to destroy everything. As long as he destroyed everything, naturally no one would attack him again. Shuichi Mako stood on the roof of the building and watched the scene, followed by the Uchiha Shisui, who had turned into a ghost. I didn't expect Danzang to be able to create such a monster. The other party has a variety of different blood ghost spells, and the combination of them is extremely powerful. Unfortunately, this monster was injected with a special potion by Danzang, and it didn't take long for the whole body to die of cell failure. Otherwise, he really wanted to use his own blood to assimilate this artificial ghost and bring it into his control. Don't be a god, go get rid of that ghost and let me see your blood ghost arts. Tru Gongxiu said to the water behind him without looking back. Yes. The other gods bowed slightly, and disappeared in an instant. Perhaps because of the lot of ghost blood injected, the other gods were born with two different kinds of blood ghost arts. One comes from himself, which can perfectly replicate the effect of a phantom teleportation technique. The other comes from his mutated writing wheel eyes, and the pupil technique of the kaleidoscope itself is to manipulate people's spirits. Blood magic, on the other hand, is the manipulation of the enemy's flesh. With Kirihime's offensive, it would be no problem for the other gods to deal with this scourge. Gao Hezi was furious with all the impotence around him, and even the dragon fist of the mirror twins and the evil eye of the red 100 eyes were used by him. With the blessing of the buff of multiple blood ghost spells, his painting style has now changed from an ordinary person to a kryptonite player with special effects. The whole body is metallized, and dozens of blood-red eyeballs of different sizes are cracked on the skin, and the golden dragon head effect is attached to the two fists, and the golden lotus is stepped on. It can be said that everything that can be used has been used, but it does not cause half a point of damage to the fog in the atomized form. The metallization of his body had stopped his whole body from aging, but his condition was not optimistic. His metallized body was becoming more fragile, and rust was showing in some places. The only prison mine that was not caught was lucky enough to escape the result of the blood ghost magic being copied. Otherwise, this monster will be combined with the lightning and speed of the prison mine. The intensity is unimaginable. Shuichi Makomi suddenly regretted killing Danzu so quickly, and this kind of artificial ghost technology might be able to help him. However, the Root Research Institute should not have been destroyed, and you can get a lot of information from where you go to the materials afterwards. It would be even better if I could catch 2 researchers. Takaga raised his fist and was about to destroy the nearest shop with the words Ichiraku Ramen written on it. But before the fist could be sent, someone grabbed his arm tightly. Suddenly looking back, he saw a young man with short black hair and scarlet eyes. "When did you come here?" Gao Heji was shocked. Now that he had this kind of power, he couldn't even notice the other party's approach. He immediately wanted to attack the young man standing behind him with the fist of his other hand, but the other god let go of his hand first and distanced himself from Gao Heji. The next moment, the arm that had been touched by the other gods actually moved on its own, and with the blessing of the dragon fist, it hit Gao Heji in the face with a punch. Gao Heji took a few steps back, tripped over a gravel on his heel, and sat in the ruins, looking confused. Before he could react, the arm that was not under his control was raised high again, so frightened that Gao Heji immediately suppressed it with his other hand, so that he didn't let his fist fall on his face for the second time. Quack! Quack! A huge crow, who didn't know whether it was the main body or a clone, fluttered its wings and landed on the building of Ichiraku Ramen, taunting Takagawashi in front of him with its ugly voice. "Whose kid? Why are you fighting with yourself?" Hearing this, Gao Heji couldn't bear it anymore. He turned his head suddenly, and his pupils suddenly shrank. The figure of the ghost crow gradually overlapped with the big black bird in his memory. He would never admit that he was mistaken. The crow in front of him was the bird that attacked him in the first place. He did not expect to meet again one day. Gao Heji stared at the ghost crow, his eyes splitting. "What's the matter? Don't you just say 2 words about you?" Ghost Crow looked at Gao Heji's suddenly bloodshot eyes, slightly stunned. He didn't expect his words to be so effective. But after a few seconds, it put its doubts behind it and turned into the same underbeaten appearance again. "I'm in a hurry, I'm broken. Do you want to hit me? Let's play boxing with your fist first," laughing to death. Immediately after, the raven burst into laughter. I saw that the blood-red eyes on Gao Heji's body were all looking at the ghost crow, and the blood-red light emitted from it converged on the ghost crow, instantly freezing its actions. Quack! I forgot about this trick. The ghost crow wanted to scratch its head with its wings, but it was frozen all over his body and couldn't move half a minute. Even so, he still looked indifferent. Who let this be just a clone of its crows? How could it let its own body come over and taunt? Gao Heji's attention was completely attracted by the ghost crow, and the other gods who were hanging aside moved again. This time, he pulled out the short knife on his body and cut off Gao Heji's arm that was not yet controlled. Even though Gao Heji had already activated the metallization, the metal that had been weakened by the wind of decay could not stop the blade in his hand at all. Damn! Before Gao Heji could finish speaking, the other fist that was unhindered slammed into his cheek. For ghosts, a broken arm may not be unacceptable, but it's a pity that it was him who met. The other gods put Gao Heji's severed arm in his hand, and the severed arm flew straight towards Gao Heji with a dragon fist like a missile. Whether it's on his body or broken, he can no longer control his arm at all. Gao Heji could only be forced to end the launch of the Blood Demon technique, Dragon Fist, to minimize the damage caused by his fist. The severed arm stepped into the air, and an extremely long straight blade suddenly stretched out from the ground, piercing the severed arm with precision, stringing it in mid-air, unable to go further. Gao Heji's severed arm suddenly stretched out a blade, and cut off his other arm with a swish, also interspersed with the blade on the ground. Chapter 94. Bai Tianxin's face was cold. He didn't expect Gao Heji to be so ruthless to himself, and he hardly did not hesitate. Was it really just because he was stimulated by the words of the ghost crow? The writing wheel of his eyes instantly changed into a kaleidoscope, and the green half-body giant rose from the ground, first bones, then flesh, and finally armor on his body. In order to be safe, Bai Tianxin did not hesitate to turn on Susanangu, and the spiral sword in his hand spun at high speed to attack Gao Hezhi. A sharp blade grew out of Gao Hezhi's broken arms on both sides, and in the face of the spiral sword, he directly raised his hand to barely block this assault. Gravity, he squeezed out 2 words from his mouth, his eyes suddenly burst out with purple light, and the gravity suppressed on everyone's bodies was withdrawn at this moment, and all of them were applied to Susanoo in front of him. Hush! Seeing this, he could only control Susanoo to open the breastplate, revealing the orange Megatama within. Whoosh! Countless green chakra arrows suddenly shot out from the center, and the rain of arrows in the sky instantly poured down on Gao Hezhi. Gao Hezhi was not to be outdone, and the red light that burst from his eyes instantly froze several chakra arrows in mid-air. But compared to the eyes on his body, there were more chakra arrows. The rain of arrows in the sky pierced him into a hornet's nest in just a moment. Immediately after, the spinning spiral sword approached again. The other gods knew that it was impossible to win Gao Hezhi with an attack of this magnitude, and they didn't dare to relax a little in their hearts. Boom! 2 giant blades suddenly rose from the ground, and the spiral sword in Susanoo's hand was stuck in it. Even though the 2 blades were shattered by the spiral sword in just a few seconds, Takashi had already had plenty of time to break free from the arrows. At this stalemate, Shuichi Mayumi suddenly appeared beside Takegawashi. No one noticed his arrival, and I don't know when he was standing in that position. Gao Hezhi was terrified and wanted to fight back, but found that the pipe whip had already penetrated his body from behind, and the ghost blood continued to seep into his body, colliding with his cells. Looks like it's impossible to turn you into a real ghost. Tru Gongzhihuyi threw down this sentence, pulled out the whip and left without looking back. Only Gao Hezhi was left curled up in pain in place, and his body swelled out round balls like sarcomas, gradually becoming unrecognizable. And then, bang! Exploded like an inflated balloon. This is a rejection reaction between the blood of Shuichi Shinko and the cells of Takegawashi, and theoretically if he can completely persevere, he can be successfully transformed by the blood of the ghost. But here's the problem, even if Gao Hezhi has an immortality similar to a ghost, his body still can't support it until the end of the transformation. The body reached the limit first and blew itself up. Ranblade, who was a step late, looked at the messy scene, scratching his head and looking at the other gods who had just lifted Susanoo. Did you make these blades? He apparently mistook the only ghost on the scene for a thief using his own blood ghost technique. The other gods glanced at him and pointed to the pile of flesh on the ground. Where is the person you are looking for? Gravity disappeared, and the entire Konoha village, which had been transformed into a battlefield, suddenly became chaotic again, and the ape Flying Sun, who was confronting, also put his gaze back on Momiji. Momiji also moved his muscles and bones, and his eyes were full of war. Come on, second round. Uchiha Clan Land. Uchiha Fugako looked gloomily at the mountain of ninja corpses in front of him, and several giant crows were hovering on it. The root ninjas who were watching the Uchiha clan were all wiped out. But this does not mean that the bird-type demon in front of him has good intentions towards their Uchiha clan, because he sees endless greed in the eyes of the other party. It's not that it doesn't want to hurt the Uchiha, it just wants to save the most delicious food for the last. He looked up, his eyes instantly changed into a kaleidoscope riding wheel eye with a unique pattern, and the golden skeleton gradually formed behind him. Ga. The ghost crow, who was secretly observing, received information from the clones on both sides and couldn't help but be stunned. Why didn't you find out that Uchiha and Susanoo had this kind of technique? Now that I have to eat the Uchiha, maybe it will have a chance to come out of the whole crows. With a decision made in his mind, the ghost crow immediately manipulated the crow group to attack the second form Susanoo, who was standing in front of him. But soon, he found that the attack of the crow swarm was not effective, and the sharp beak and claws that he was proud of could not break through Susanoo's defenses at all. On the contrary, Susanoo could destroy several clones with every attack. The face of the ghost crow instantly drooped, and the defensive power of the heart was too amazing. It seems that this is the only way to use that trick. It glanced up at the bright moon hanging high in the sky, manipulated a clone to deliberately attract Uchiha Fugaku's attention, and then flew into the sky, luring him to see the moon deceiving the moon, and activated. What they all have in common is that they all have that pair of evil scarlet riding wheels. Ghost Crow finally discovered the problem. The kaleidoscope riding wheel eyes can actually resist its illusion, especially the Uchiha Fugaku has 2 kaleidoscopes. The illusion resistance is even higher than the white fangs of the one-eyed kaleidoscope. Clones of the crows that were wandering outside were all disbanded, and their power was reunited on the ghost crows, helping it break through the illusion defenses of Uchiha Fugaku. Finally, looking at the Uchiha Fugaku, who was completely caught in the illusion, the ghost crow laughed twice and began to edit the content of the illusion. He planned to have Uchiha Fugaku's son, Uchiha Itachi, slaughter the entire Uchiha clan in front of him. It's really good, just thinking about it makes my blood boil. As the patriarch and father, Uchiha Fugaku must not be able to accept this result, right? Chapter 95. There are 1.5 people standing on the Hokage rock, one is Obito, and the other is only half of the Black Jedi. Obito, do you want to make a move? These evil ghosts are becoming more and more unscrupulous. Before it was Fog Hidden Village, and now it is aimed at Konoha Village. He was silent in response, and Obito stared intently at the war-torn village of Konoha below. They originally envisioned that these demons and the 5 great powers would contain each other, but they didn't expect the strength of these demons to progress so quickly. It's got to a point where they can't handle it even if they want to. Even if he made a move, how could he fight so many evil ghosts alone, not to mention that there were shadow-level ghosts among them. Don't care about what's happening here, let Nagato start the tailed beast capture plan immediately, and it can't be delayed any longer. He couldn't imagine what the ninja world would become in the future. But at least things aren't completely out of his control yet. By the way, Obito, there's some information you might be interested in. In the Land of Sand, there is a human pillar force suspected of being 9-tailed, and he also has the power of evil ghosts in his body. With the blessing of 2 powerful forces, the Sand-Hidden Village is about to collapse. In desperation, one tail has been used, but the situation is only temporarily stabilized, and the future is still not optimistic. 9 tails, isn't the 9 tails pillar force still in Konoha Village? Obito's face sank. The current ninja world is getting more and more chaotic, and even the 9 tails pillar force has appeared in 2. Even Madara Uchiha didn't expect this to happen. Exiting the illusion, Uchiha Fugaku was in a trance, and Susanang, who had already taken shape, collapsed in an instant, but quickly adjusted his state and glared angrily at the ghost crow. At this time, the ghost crow branched out into countless clones, and these clones merged into its body, forming the shell of the huge Crow King, which was no smaller than Fugaku's bust Susanoo. Fugaku re-rises Susa, wanting to use Susa's armor to resist the flying fear slash. Who knew that the dread slash actually penetrated Susanoo's defenses directly and submerged into his body? He was not hurt in the slightest, but the fear in his heart continued to breed and spread, and he couldn't hold on to his knees in just a few seconds. Susa disintegrates again. Father! Uchiha Itachi, who was hiding behind, saw that the situation was not right, and immediately stepped forward to support Fugaku with an instantaneous technique, his eyes full of puzzlement. At this moment, Fuyu has lost all his fighting spirit. Run, Itachi, take Sasuke with you, and run as far away as possible. Itachi froze in place. Most of the Uchiha are still relatively united, and as soon as Fugaku was defeated, several Uchiha shinobi suddenly rushed behind him, and they launched an attack on the Ghost Crow together. Armed with the lessons of the past, they no longer fantasized about blocking the bizarre slash, but tried to avoid it by all means. In this way, the two sides tugged at each other, until Uchiha Itachi helped Fugaku back to the clan land. Hey, you can't do it. Hearing this unceremonious remark, the crow jerked back and realized that it was the unfamiliar face that had opened the green giant earlier. The other party also seems to have a kaleidoscope riding wheel eye. Go away. This is my hunting ground, none of your business, the raven shot back angrily. Bishinjin shook his head and looked at the Uchiha clan, who had barely attrition. This is your achievement, and it may not be possible to clean it up until dawn, so let me help you. Seeing the appearance of the person who came, Uchiha Itachi's pupils shrank sharply, and he recognized the figure who was with him day and night at a glance. Suppressing the anger and confusion in his heart, Itachi looked at Fuyu again, and the effect of the fear slash on Fuyu seemed to have eased. Father, he was about to say something, but Fugaku was the first to interrupt him. Itachi, you take Mikoto and Suzuki, how far can you go? Konoha has. There is no future. His face was as dead as ashes, and there was no hope in his eyes. I'll leave it to you, Itachi, two of them. With that, Fugaku didn't wait for Itachi to reply, got up and walked towards the ghost crow again, the determined look in his eyes dispelling the fear. At the very least, he wants to let Itachi and Suzuki escape. Looking at Fuyu's distant back, Itachi also made up his mind, and the riding wheel in his eyes suddenly turned into a kaleidoscope. On the other hand, the battlefield on Sarutobi's side is much more intense than on the Uchiha side, and the terrain change is a trivial matter, and any of their attacks may accidentally injure nearby people or ghosts. So no one dared to enter this area all the time. Sarutobi's old wounds add new wounds to his body, and although Momiji also has a lot of blood on his body, his wounds are constantly healing. Fighting a protracted war, the ape Fei cannot stand it, and he is defeated and retreated. Smack, smack. The sudden sound of clapping attracted the attention of the two of them, and they saw Shuichi Mako standing on the red thorns of the red leaves of the autumn leaves, looking at them expectantly. 3 generations of Hokage, you seem to be too immersed in battle. Or look around you. Ape Fury suddenly paused after hearing this, and looked around to find several evil ghosts. They are not those ghosts that can be simply sealed, but the big ghosts that are famous in the land of fire. Surrounded by so many ghosts in a row, even he has a weak heart. What about the rest of the village? He was silent, his eyes scanning back and forth between Momiji and Shuichi Mako, and finally his gaze fell on Shuichi Mako. The next moment, the ape flying sun jumped up suddenly, and the Vajra Ruyi stick in his hand turned into an ape demon and landed behind True Bao Zaihui. The ape flying sun body fell in front of him, and the seal was sealed in his hand. The ghouls are sealed. A Grim Reaper with a knife appeared behind the ape flying sun, his eyes bursting with fierce light, staring at Shuichi Mako. It's this trick again. True Bao Zaihui is embarrassed, and Shimura Tunzo also wanted to die with him before, but now you want to play this set again. It's really worthy of being taught by a teacher. Okay, then let the two of you walk neatly. Seeing that Shuichi didn't resist, there was a hint of suspicion in Ape Fei's eyes, but once the ghoul seal was released, he couldn't regret it anymore. His eyes froze, and he stretched out his hands to pull out the soul of the true Bao Zaihui, but he didn't want to catch it. Why? Sarutobi looked at Shuichi Makomi in horror, and the worst thought in his mind came true. That's right, you guessed it. The true Bao Shuichi in front of him melted in an instant and turned into a pool of blood. It's just a flesh and blood clone, he deceived Tuanzang, and repeated his trick to deceive Ape Fei. I wanted Ape Fei Sun to slay the ghoul and seal a clone, but the doppelganger had no soul, so this matter had to be stopped. Seeing that the real Bao cultivator who came here was a clone, Momiji glanced at the ape flying and slashing, and also consciously distanced himself. Lest this old man find no one and be incompetent and angry at himself. Although it was unclear what the specific effect of his technique was, the cold power released by the god of death still made him feel uncomfortable. A tactical retreat is not something to be ashamed of. Sarutobi turned around and tried to reselect Momiji as the target of the ghouls, but by the time he reacted, Momiji had already run far away, and only a small back could be seen. No one was around him, and no one was near him. Abe Fari was silent. Chapter 96. Konoha matters are over for the time being, although there are still some fish that have slipped through the net, Konoha remnants, and Shuichi Mako is not interested in pulling out those rats one by one. Naruto Uzumaki, who is still young in this world, has not been found, perhaps because he was taken away by the remnants of Konoha and escaped. However, he still has red gold in his hand, and the chakra of the nine tails doesn't necessarily have to be taken from Naruto Uzumaki. Neither Sasuke Uchiha nor Itachi Uchiha died under the sword of the other gods, and may have escaped with other old and weak women and children. He found piles of research materials at the Root Research Institute, including Orochimaru's name, presumably the scientific madman who was also involved in the experiment. Unexpectedly, the crow poison in Gao Hezi's body turned out to be the key to his ability to accommodate a variety of blood ghost techniques, and he had no news in the past 3 years, and his control over ghosts had also dropped to the freezing point. That's what made Tuanzang come up with such a monster. Shuichi Shinbo just glanced at the information about artificial ghosts, and burned them all in one fell swoop. He was able to rely on the devouring ghost to obtain the compound blood demon technique, but these things were of no use to him, and it was impossible for the other ghosts to let the venom remain in his body. Next, it's time to deal with the 12 ghost months, and the 12 ghost months must all be shuffled. More than 90% of the ninjas in Konoha village were slaughtered, and most of the ghosts who participated in this operation have improved by leaps and bounds. Infighting is omitted here. The list of the new 12 ghost months is finalized. Upper Quarter 1, Don't Be a God. In the Battle of Konoha against the Uchiha clan with the Oni Crow, he gained a large amount of ninja essence blood and strengthened his kaleidoscope writing wheel eyes. Although it is not as strong as the pupil power of the Eternal Eye, at least he can now open the full-body Susanangu in a short period of time, and this earth-destroying power cannot even be resisted by Momiji. In addition, his blood ghost technique is also the type of strong when it is strong, and weak when it is weak, and there are really few people who can compete with him on this string. First string 2, Suinwu, Chaijin. Theoretically, the same human pillar force, Suinwu's strength is not as good as Chaijin's, but Chaijin has not recovered much of his sanity now, and he can only kick him out of the 12 ghost moons. Although he did not participate in the Battle of Konoha, relying on the powerful power brought by the complete tailed beast transformation, the only people who could fight him were other gods, Red Gold and Red Leaves. Winding 3, Red Leaves. Although Momiji has also made progress in the past 3 years, it is known as the Small Pillar, but there is still a long way to go before the real Thousand Hands Pillar. In the duel with Suinwu, he was one move behind and could only settle for third. Perhaps this was a fact that was difficult for him to accept. Top Quarter 4, White Fang. White Fang's ability to attack in the air is always a first sight skill, and it is impossible to prevent it. With the help of other gods, he also managed to use that kaleidoscope of divine power to open Susanangu, although the one-eyed Susa can only open to the second stage at most, but it is also a threat that should not be underestimated. Spatial ability and Susanangu and invisible slash, this set of skills is enough to make him sit firmly in the position of the winder. Upper Quarter 5, Mirror Shadow. The Mirror Shadow House of Equality has not changed much, except that some new features have been added. For example, copying one of the opponent's skills and twisting it. The chi that was controlled before came from his fog concealment technique. In the face of enemies of her own level, or weaker, she can completely suppress them. But in the face of stronger enemies, it is a bit stretched. Upper Quarter 6, Kiriheim. Her atomization ability has been able to last for a long time, and the decay power is too buggy for a living person to withstand, and if she doesn't die, she will have to be disabled for a lifetime. It's a pity that it's still a little short of fighting with ghosts, and it can only be ranked 6th. The next string 1, after the beast, made Kai becomes a ghost, it can still use the 8-gate Dungia, but the supply power has changed from Chakra to Ghost. The key is that the Door of Death is no longer a one-time skill, although the power is not as good as it was at the beginning, but there is no problem with playing an ordinary shadow level, and it can already be used as a permanent trick. However, even if the ghost does not face death after using the death door, it will not be able to fight for a short period of time after that, so use it with caution. He could have climbed to the higher levels, but he was strict with himself, not eating old people or children, and only preferring young and strong young people. This principle has greatly hindered his growth, otherwise he should not have been ranked first. The second string, the owner of the red kite, Terumi Ming. Double blood inheritance limit, the time to become a ghost is still too short, but the future can be expected. Lower string 3. Liuxiu's strength has improved too little in the past 3 years, and she can't bear to look at it directly, but overall it is still not too weak. But after all, there is a background of winding, even if there is a change of generation, it can be mixed with the next string, so as not to directly kick out the 12 ghost months. Lower string 4, Chaos Blade, was boosted after the Konoha campaign, devouring the blunt knife, pocket cut, broken knife, decapitating broadsword, explosive knife, droplet, and long knife, stitch needle, and gained the traits blade self-regeneration, indestructible, explosion, and thread. He is currently tracking the whereabouts of the broadsword, shark muscle, and thunder knife, fang, and it may not be long before all 7 ninja knives are in his pocket. If he is allowed to go head-to-head with Konoha Gao-Heiji now, there may still be a lot of chances of winning. Bottom quarter 5, Ghost Crow. The Ghost Crow can be said to be the worst of the first strings, falling directly to the 5th of the lower strings, and almost being removed from the ranks of the 12 ghost moons. Maybe it's because its upper limit is here, and its strength hasn't changed in the slightest in the past 3 years. What did Shuichi look like before he left, but what he looks like now, not even as good as flowing snow. Weak is weak, and true Bao Shuichi will not give it a promotion because he is loyal. Even if you are in a high position, you will be quickly beaten down by the wheel war. Bottom string 6, Prison Thunder. This time, Prison Thunder completed his revenge on the Mirror Twins and successfully captured the last position of the 12 ghost moons. This is all thanks to the fact that he hid well and was not sealed by Konoha and picked up a lot of leaks in that battle, and his strength skyrocketed. Although the Mirror Twins have different blood ghost techniques, almost as soon as the front foot of the true Gongxiu walks, his back foot is sealed. Now his gravity suppression ability is not as good as the suppression ability that Gao Hezi showed at the beginning. People suppressed the Ape Flying Sun Slash and the Red Leaves together. It would be difficult for the Mirror Twins to suppress any of them. At this point, the new 12 ghost moons are fully established, and they can be regarded as handy. Shuichi Makumi is also happy to carve words in their eyes. While the strings are engraved, the numbers are engraved on the other. The next string only carves an eye. After that, it's time to set the goal on the Akatsuki organization. If you want to become a 10-tailed human pillar force, the outer Dao Golem is indispensable. Chapter 97. Yuyan Village, Xia Organization. Maybe this organization will be out of control in the future, but at this time period, they don't even have all the members, and they don't have the capital to start the tailed beast capture plan. Now all of this has been ruined by Shuichi Shinyuki. Uchiha Obito, out of his own considerations, was already asking Nagato to open the tailed beast capture plan in advance, but was vetoed by the other party. Obviously, the self-proclaimed god didn't pay attention to those evil creatures who were afraid of the sun, at least his Yuyan village had always been peaceful. The few ghosts who wanted to offend Yuyan village were all dragged into the sun by him and turned to ashes. Hearing that Konoha village was destroyed, he just snorted coldly and took those ghosts seriously. Even if Madara Uchiha wanted him to use the Akatsuki organization to capture the tailed beast, it would be almost impossible now, and there were too few people. His pain counts as 1, Konan counts as 1, the recently added dried persimmon oni shark counts as 1, the red sand scorpion counts as 1, the Uchiha Madara counts as 1, and Orochimaru counts as 1. As for the absolute one, his actual combat ability is a little weak, so he will not be counted. I was going to recruit Kakuto, but it turned out that Kakuto had not heard from him since he ran to the country of grass, which made people wonder if he was dead. Whether such an organization alone can succeed in capturing all the tailed beasts is a question worth pondering. Not to mention that now that Konoha has been destroyed, the Nine Tails Pillar Force is nowhere to be found. Not only Nagato thought so, but also Shuichi Mako, so a month after reorganizing the 12 Ghost Moons, he gathered all the 12 Ghost Moons in the border area between the Land of Fire and the Land of Rain. By the way, he brought Chaijin under control, and his power could be better exerted in Yuyan village. I plan to take advantage of his illness to kill him. The Xia organization, which is not yet fully developed, is the easiest to defeat, and the only thing that needs to be paid attention to is the 6 paths of pain. Night falls. Obito and Ju have already discovered the ghosts ambushed in the Land of Rain, and Yuyan village has been surrounded. His face sank, and he didn't expect that the other party had only destroyed Konoha village 2 months ago, so he stopped for a moment, and immediately set his eyes on Yuyan village again. At this time, they found these evil spirits hiding in the dark, and it was too late to go back and tell Nagato. Maybe they should think about the next plan. Nagato is just a pawn after all. If Nagato can't do it, then it's up to him Uchiha to do it. I hope Nagato can get rid of those annoying ghosts, and then give me his reincarnation eye. Obito stood on a high place overlooking the entire Yuyan village, and muttered in a low voice. It's still raining. Shuichi Mayumi stood in the rain, looking up at the black sky, letting the rain wet his hair and clothes. The mirror shadow that followed him was very cautiously looking around. Nagato should have used the Rain Tiger Freedom technique to learn of his arrival, and after waiting for a while, several figures landed in front of Yuyan village. They all have orange hair, purple reincarnation eyes, and uniform attire. It's Pen 6 Deo, and none of them fall. Who is coming? Tiandao Pain looked at him expressionlessly, although he already had a number in his heart. Someone who came to kill you. True Baoshu snapped his fingers, and the mirror shadow immediately launched the blood ghost technique, transferring all pain except for the heavenly Dao to an independent layered space. 5 stacked spaces prepared in advance, each waiting for a winding, allow them to go head to head with pain 6 ways, completely neutralizing the shared vision of pain 6 ways. After completing her mission, Kagej disappeared from reality, and no one knew where she had gone except for Shuichi Mako and herself. The 5 pains also met their enemies after entering the cascading space of the belly ground separately. Beast Road and Kiriheim. Hungry Ghost Road and White Fang. The Tao of the World and Suanwu. Hell Road and Autumn Leaves. Shura Dao and other gods. The first time Nagato learned about the situation, his face sank, and he realized that he had been pitted by Madara Uchiha. This spatial ability is not at all like what Madara Uchiha said, it requires physical contact to activate. I didn't expect pain to be pulled into a special space from such a distance. Obito, why don't you tell Nagato the correct information? If there is information, how many ghosts can Nagato kill? The ability of the human Dao or the Hell Dao should be able to effectively deal with the ghost with immortality, so why not let him give it a try? That ghost's spatial ability is even more powerful than his divine power. Even if you tell Nagato, you can't just keep pain from showing up for the rest of your life. Obito rubbed his eyebrows, and said with a headache. There are already people among the ghosts who can use the full-body Susanengu, plus a few other upper string ghosts. Do you really think Nagato can defeat them? As long as he enters that space, pain will not be able to escape, and the lower string ghosts are also forming a group to attack Yuyan village, and the other members of the Xiao organization have also gone out to fight. Now Nagato has only one Xiaonan by his side, but if this offensive continues, she will eventually come out to fight. The complete body is Susanengu, the three-tailed human pillar power, the thorn technique that resembles Mu-Dun, and the most difficult atomization ghost. None of these guys are fuel-efficient lamps. It would be nice if the people in the Xiao organization were all together, but now the rest of the Xiao organization may not even be able to solve the other lower string ghosts. Once defeated, Pain will face a back-and-back attack. He paused, because Heavenly Dao Pain and Shuichi Mayumi had already started fighting each other after a brief conversation. But the power of the Eye of Reincarnation is still strong, even if there is only one Heavenly Dao Pain, he will not fall behind at all, and even faintly suppress the enemy. Now, finding a way to recover Nagato's reincarnation eye is the most important thing, and we can't let the outer path golems fall into the hands of these ghosts. The thought that the outer Dao golem might fall into the hands of the ghost made him feel creepy. Heiju nodded thoughtfully, feeling that it was not impossible to follow the idea of taking the soil, but he always felt that Nagato was cheated like this, and it was a pity. He stared at Obito with a strange gaze, not knowing what was going on in his head. Obito didn't notice the black gaze, or rather, he did, but he didn't want to care. His eyes stared straight at the battle between Heavenly Dao Pain and Shuichi Trubao, trying to find a flaw in it. I saw that Heavenly Dao Pain tried his best to avoid hand-to-hand combat with Trubao Shuichi, but whenever Trubao Xiaoyi tried to get closer, he was repelled by a Shinra heavenly sign. Every time the Shinra Celestial Expedition is released, Shuichi Mayumi will be severely injured, and he will be sent by an ordinary person a long time ago, but he is a ghost. This level of attack can only be described as tickling. It seems that only the Earthburst Celestial Star can completely eliminate him. Obito groped his chin, always feeling that the person with many spells would not be hit by the Earth Explosion Star so easily. Chapter 98. Ghost Blood is Useless. True Gongshiu looked at Heavenly Dao Pain, who was scratched by the whip in puzzlement. He was not affected in the slightest by the ghost blood in his body. Could it be because he was just a dead puppet? Although he desperately wanted to find Nagato, he couldn't pass the Heavenly Dao Pain, and everything was in vain. Heavenly Dao Pain didn't want him to get close, so he would use normal blood ghost techniques to deal with it. Hitting this, Shuichi Mayumi no longer forcibly wanted to get close. After all, ghost blood didn't play any role. Blood demon magic, flesh and blood clone. Immediately split a flesh and blood clone, planning to use 2-to-1 to take advantage first. Maybe Heavenly Dao Pain will use the Earth Explosion Heavenly Star. Don't be afraid, he still has a backhand, which is enough to deal with the Earth Bursting Star. The true Gongshiu in front of him was split into two in an instant, and even with the reincarnation eye, he couldn't tell which one was real, and they all seemed to have the same body structure. Forget it, it's just a clone. Just. As True Bao Shiyi had predicted, a small floating black ball appeared in Heavenly Dao Pain's hand, and it was quickly sent into the air. Immediately afterward, a huge suction force appeared, and the ground was divided into pieces of rocky land, which were attached to the black ball. I knew that I would fight in Yuyan village. This move is estimated to destroy most of Yuyan village, right? Although Shuichi Mayumi held the ground tightly, the shattered rocks still made him rise, and together with the clone, the whole person was attached to the sphere made of rock and soil. The next moment, more rocks covered him, making him unable to move. Until the Earthburst Celestial Star is fully completed. Tian Dao Pain looked up at the huge sphere in the sky, still expressionless, but Nagato, who was controlling him behind him, was secretly relieved. Obito, he's not going to be dealt with like that, is he? Asked Kuruk. Who knows? Obito didn't express his opinion, but he vaguely felt that things wouldn't be that simple. Since the other party dared to come to Yuyan village, he must be fully prepared. Knowing before the war is to separate all 6 of Pain's realms is a good example. Suddenly, a mutation occurred. The earth-shattering celestial star suddenly overflowed with Deo golden light, and immediately after, a golden body, with wings on his back, and a celestial god wearing armor directly cut the trap sphere into 4 petals with just 2 swords. But without exception, they both had a pair of scarlet eyes open on the inside of their wrists. Kaleidoscope Sharingan. Shuichi Mayumi used his own cells to transform the kaleidoscope Sharingan left behind by Uchiha Fugaku. Originally, Fuyu's eyes didn't have much pupil power, and he was not far from blindness. He directly transformed it into a one-time item that could open a complete body and a mustache, and it was completely scrapped at the end of this battle, just to fight against Nagato, who had the Eye of Reincarnation. Humph! Kaleidoscope Riding Wheel Eye. Obito's eyes froze, but he didn't expect to see the second complete body Susanangu, and the scales in his heart tilted again. Originally, I thought that Tiandao Pain had some hope of winning, but now it seems that he is completely hopeless. Let's go see Nagato. After that, Obito teleported away with a divine power, no longer observing this battle where the outcome was decided. Compared with watching a play, the Eye of Reincarnation is undoubtedly more important. Heiju watched Obito leave alone, and didn't take him with him, but he didn't say anything, and sank into the ground without a trace. After they left, 2 figures appeared out of thin air at the position of the original combat power, which were the Mirror Shadow and the Heavenly Eye. Pain Rokudo was imprisoned in 5, and Shang Feng had 6, so she didn't need to appear in the mirror at all, so Shuichi Mayumi arranged another task for her. It is to track the traces of the Uchiha Obito with Tianmu, and this hidden danger of running around must be strangled in the cradle. They had been here for a long time just now, and although they couldn't hear the conversation between Obito and Heiju, they could see from their demeanor. They're not going to have a good idea. Can you see where they're going? Asked Kajiji Oshinmu. The 2 shinobi left in their own special ways, and with her strength, they really couldn't track them. But Tianmu should be able to. Tianmu glanced at it a few times and spoke, I went to the interior of Yuyan village, the lower string ghost is still fighting with other members of the Xia organization, and has not attacked Yuyan village for the time being. Shall we go in now? Go, why don't you go? The mirror shadow dodged and entered the cascading space again, and he didn't forget to pull Tianmu in. On the other side, the battlefield of the lower strings. Where did this guy come from? Ranblade leaped backwards onto the massive blade that stood on the ground, his toes firmly tapping at the tip of the blade. With a horrified expression, he looked at Chaijin, who was cloaked in a tailed beast and used his limbs together, scurrying wildly through the battlefield. This guy is friend or foe? This is youth, it's burning. As soon as the 8 doors opened, the beast kicked and smashed the puppet in front of him again. Messy blade to support his forehead, he is the one who has been waiting for 2 rounds of winding. Compared with the previous indifferent lower string group that did not interfere with each other, this new lower string group can be said to have different painting styles, and they are not normal. Where the hell did this guy come from? His strength has completely surpassed the lower string. Chaotic Blade muttered in his mouth, and saw Chaijin grab the clone of the ghost crows in the sky and scatter the clones with one claw. I'm afraid the ghost crows have already exploded. Really, I can see why his name isn't in the 12 ghost months. We have to find a way to lure him to Yuyan village and let him make trouble there. Chaos Blade thought in his head, and the figure of a ghost crow suddenly appeared in his mind. Why don't you let the ghost crow come? I think this guy likes to catch his birds, and he has a lot of doppelgangers, so it's no problem to die a few. So, Ranblade looked around, found a ghost crow clone who was observing the overall situation, and secretly leaned over. Originally, the ghost crow was still wary of the people who came, but when he saw that it was his own people, the vigilance in his heart relaxed a little. What for? It made an unpleasant voice in its hoarse voice. Ranblade was already immune to this kind of voice, and said with a grin, Senior Ghost Crow, you see that blonde-haired guy is completely making trouble on this battlefield. I really don't know what Lord Ghost King sent him for. So I thought of a way to instantly elevate your status in our lower strings. This is something that only you can do." After hearing this, the ghost crow looked at him suspiciously, and doubted, "What way?" Chaijin made it 2 heads bigger, and his crow clone didn't dare to land in front of him casually. "It's to use your clone to lure that guy to Yin village. You will lose 2 or 3 clones at most, but it will benefit all of us. Then we worked together to clean up the battlefield here, and entered Yin village to assist the Ghost King in completing the mission. Don't worry, I will definitely tell the Ghost King about your selfless dedication word for word." Hearing the first half, the Ghost Crow refused. It didn't have this kind of sacrifice to become someone else's mind. But when I heard the second half, it shook instantly. Originally, it was uncomfortable to slide directly from the top to the bottom 5, but now that it has a chance to shine, should it grasp it? The Ghost Crow's eyes rolled, and finally agreed. "Okay, I'll seduce that fox, and you take the opportunity to deal with those people in the Xiao organization. Then it's all up to the Ghost Crow seniors." Ranblade grinned as he watched the clone in front of him flap its wings and leave, but he sneered disdainfully in his heart. This Ghost Crow is just a coax. Chapter 99. This sword, can you catch it? They. True Bao Cultivator opened his body and shook it towards the small heavenly Daopane on the ground. The sword chi instantly tore the earth open a bottomless rift, and slashed straight from this wasteland to the Yin village behind him. Nagato's face changed drastically, and he immediately manipulated the heavenly Daopane to use the Shinra Heavenly Expedition to block this terrifying slash. Fortunately, it was released in time, but it was only affected by the impact caused by the sword chi, and he did not suffer a frontal attack. Immediately, True Bao Zaihui didn't give him time to breathe, his 2 swords were combined, and the blades swung down heavily. Boom! 2 X-shaped cracks cracked on the ground, and Heavenly Daopane couldn't avoid it, so he was directly lifted away, and the clothes on his body with a black background and red clouds became tattered. "It's over, Pain." Between the flashes of golden light, Heavenly Daopane's body was ruthlessly destroyed. "Ha!" Nagato gasped, his thin body trembling slightly, and manipulating 6 panes at the same time put a great burden on his body. Heavenly Daopane disconnected the link, and the other pane were not in a good situation, and in the end, it would only be those ghosts who came out of the other dimension. It was divided like this, and they were broken one by one. Nagato's face was cloudy, and Xiaonan next to him hurriedly surrounded him when he saw this, with a worried look on his face. "Nagato, are you all right?" He took a steady breath and looked away from Xiaonan and straight ahead. A vortex was created in the space, and the figure of Madara Uchiha appeared in front of them. "What are you doing now?" He looked at Madara Uchiha cautiously with a blank look in his eyes. "Naturally, I want to tell you that the Nine Tails Pillar Force is now wantonly abusing and killing Yurin in Yin village." Obito's eyes twinkled, and he looked at Nagato. "We're surrounded now." Black Jedi also poked his head out of the side, secretly observing every move in the cave. "That's right, you're surrounded." As soon as the familiar and unfamiliar sound fell, it was accompanied by a soothing and beautiful music. The Mirror Shadow and Tianmu who tracked the earth found an opportunity at this moment, and everyone, including Heiju, heard the heavenly voice of Tianmu at the same time. "It's you." Obito recognized Kagami at a glance, but as soon as this thought came out, his mind went blank, forgetting who he was and what he was supposed to do. But Nagato was apparently unaffected, perhaps because the reincarnation eyes blocked the hypnotic effect of the voice of heaven for him. "You? Is it the ghost? I found this place so quickly." Nagato closed his eyes, already looking at death as if he were at home. His current body no longer supports his ability to use the reincarnation eye. But, even if he died, he couldn't let these eyes fall into the hands of others. Thinking of this, he stretched out his hand to pull out the reincarnation eye in his eye socket, but Zhengong Shuichi flew in front of him and grabbed his wrist. As soon as he defeated Heavenly Dao Pain, he found the location of the mirror shadow, and he planned to deal with Obito first, but he didn't expect to find Nagato by mistake. Now Obito and Xiaonan were caught off guard by the sound of heaven hypnotizing. It was a good time for him to seize the reincarnation eye. True Gongshiu shot out one of Nagato's reincarnation eyes in an instant, followed by a burst of Shinra heavenly signs that bounced him away entirely, and the other people who fell into hypnosis also woke up at this moment. Ahem! Nagato coughed up a mouthful of blood, and the ability to release the reincarnation eye with his body still caused him a lot of burden. He was closing the snatched eye, and the other eye was looking at Shuichi Mayumi with hatred. Obito woke up suddenly, not realizing what had just happened, and when he saw the reincarnation eye on Zhen Gongshiu's hand, his mood turned sharply and his face was gloomy. True Gongshiu stretched out a slender red tentacle from the palm of his hand, pierced into the eye of reincarnation and dragged it in. The eye of reincarnation is gradually merging with his flesh and blood. A few seconds later, there was a purple reincarnation eye in the palm of his right hand. Now that time is pressing, he can only use this way to let the reincarnation eye merge with himself first. Seeing that the reincarnation eye had fused with the true Bao Shuichi, Obito instantly turned around and attacked Nagato. Xiaonan manipulated the paper to block it, but Obito passed through her entirely. A mark formed on his hand, and Nagato shuddered violently, clutching his heart in pain, and his heart felt as if it was about to explode. The surgery left on Nagato's heart began to work. Obito broke away from the void and reached out to take off Nagato's reincarnation eye, and a vortex appeared in the space where he was in an instant, sucking his whole person in. Seeing this, the onlookers also hurriedly slipped away. Is this the power of the eye of reincarnation? Shuichi Shingong clenched his palm, feeling not very satisfied. Now he is in a similar situation to Obito transplanting the reincarnation eye. Compared to Nagato, who has complete eyes, he lacks some abilities. Sure enough, you still have to get the other reincarnation eye in Obito's hand, although you ran away with the Shinwei space, but don't forget, the other Shinwei eye is still in the hands of White Fang. Immediately decided, True Bao Shuichi summoned White Fang and asked him to use the kaleidoscope riding wheel eye on his body to enter the Shinwei space. White Fang did so. After entering the Kamui space, he saw the Uchiha Obito half kneeling on the ground at a glance, and also saw the reincarnation eye in his hand. Obito noticed that someone had entered the Kamui space, and when he looked back and saw White Fang's face, he was stunned for a moment. Seizing this opportunity, White Fang slashed at Uchiha Obito's body, and blood splattered in an instant, and Uchiha Obito's body was cut with a large gap. Cough. Obito endured the pain, grabbed the reincarnation eye, and used Shinwei to exit the Shinwei space again, and the White Fang also followed. Sensing the constant movement of White Fang, Shuichi also chased after him with his legs, but he wanted to see where Uchiha Obito could escape. Chapter 100. Blood mark instantly appeared on Obito's body. If it weren't for the fact that he also had intercolumnar cells in his body, he would have lost all his combat ability by now. Seeing that White Fang was in hot pursuit, Obito gritted his teeth and turned around to release ninjutsu. Fire escape, how fireball! Huge fireball blocked the path between White Fang and Obito, and White Fang used Kamui to suck How Fireball into Kamui space and then chased after it again. In the face of this guy who can't get rid of him, Obito is very regretful now. Why did he leave Kakashi's eyes to Kakashi? It won't be so much to recover it sooner. But it's useless to complain now, you have to find a way to get rid of this guy behind you. He kept running away, occasionally teleporting with Kamui. He knew that as long as he stopped, the ghost who just wanted to snatch the eye of reincarnation would immediately catch up. Damn it! Was rustic, but he couldn't think of anything good for a while. He looked at the single reincarnation eye in his hand, and suddenly a bold idea occurred in his mind. He has both the power of the Uchiha and the assistance of the interpillar cells, the power of a single reincarnation eye. Thinking of this, he didn't hesitate to turn around and rush towards White Fang, and at the same time, the three-hooked jade riding wheel eye transplanted in his other eye launched Izanagi. Seeing that Obito did not choose to run away, but rushed towards him, White Fang was stunned for a moment, and then raised his hand to release a ferocious slash. The slash pierced Obito's body directly, and it seemed that he had entered a state of void again. To deal with the void state, you can only use your teeth to cut off the emptiness. White Fang's pupils shrank suddenly, and a crack instantly appeared on Obito's body, cutting off his entire body. That's the end of it, right? Looking at the corpse on the ground, White Fang breathed a sigh of relief. It's not over yet. Obito's voice came from behind him, and White Fang suddenly turned his head and saw Obito standing on a branch, looking like he had been cut in half. When I looked down, I saw that the body with soil had disappeared. However, the difference is that the living Uchiha Obito in front of him does not wear a mask, revealing his true appearance. Obito removed his hand from his eyes, and when he opened his eyes, he instantly revealed the reincarnation eye of his left eye and the kaleidoscope riding wheel eye of his right eye. HRE celestial sign. They. Powerful shockwave instantly knocked White Fang into the air, and the white light blinded his vision. After releasing this move, Uchiha Obito stumbled violently, almost fainting, and the chakra in his body bottomed out in an instant. It seems that with his level, it is still too reluctant to fully exert the power of a single reincarnation eye. The surrounding forest was instantly razed to the ground by the HRE celestial expedition, and he looked around and found no sign of White Fang. Finally got rid of this guy. Just as he was about to use Kamui to escape from this place, he heard a strange and familiar voice behind him. Vientian is a celestial guide. His body instantly lost control and flew towards Shuichi Mayumi, who grabbed him and pressed him to the ground and rubbed it. Shuichi Shinyuki used the power of the reincarnation eye without the side effects of Uchiha Obito, and after controlling Uchiha Obito, he immediately reached out and cut off the reincarnation eye in his eye socket and placed it in the palm of his other hand. Now he has both reincarnation eyes, and he has all the other functions except for the special spells Wheel Tomb, Border Prison and Heavenly Hindrance Earthquake. Your game is over, Obito. A black rod instantly appeared on Shin Baoshiu's hand, piercing Obito's body and fixing it to the ground. At this moment, White Fang came to his senses from the HRE Heavenly Expedition and half-knelt in front of him. I'm very sorry, Lord Ghost, but I didn't do my job well. If it weren't for the fact that Shuichi Makomi happened to feel it, maybe he would have let Obito run away, and he wouldn't have been able to track Obito anymore. It's not your fault. Zhen Gongxiu glanced at him, too lazy to blame the fault on White Fang. Eat this person, and by the way, transplant his riding wheel eye to yourself. If you don't have the divine eye, Obito is just a waste. Instead of turning him into a ghost, it is better to concentrate all the power of Kamui Eye on White Fang. I may be able to open a second complete body Susanangu. Shuichi Mako looked at the pair of kaleidoscope riding wheels that had turned grey and white at his wrists, and had completely lost his pupil power, which was a little pity. Watching this shocking scene from a distance, Heiju didn't say a word, and he couldn't see much emotion on his face. That's not good. The two reincarnation eyes have fallen into the hands of ghosts, and the Uchiha Obito is really not as good as the Uchiha Madara. Otherwise, let's take a look at the dirt. Lord Oni. Tianmu took a step back and flew to the side of True Bao Shuichi, subconsciously scanning the surroundings with his special white eyes. Then, he discovered the Black Jedi hiding in the shadows. Sensing that Tianmu's gaze fell on him, the Black Absolute Secret Path was not good, and he immediately wanted to get into the ground and slip away. Whoosh! Suddenly, a black rod flew from a distance, piercing his arm and pinning him to the ground. Whoosh! Several black rods flew in succession, pushing him to the ground, completely unable to move. Shuichi walked up to him and looked down condescendingly at the black humanoid who was half buried in the ground. Can a headshot with a black stick kill a black absolute? He vaguely remembered that the body of the Black Jedi was a puddle of liquid, and it felt that it was not as good as the sealing technique. By the way, let's use Konoha's ghost sealing method. He had found the corresponding information in the laboratory of the group before, and he had learned it cursorily, and as long as he made a slight modification to it, he could immediately turn it into a sealing technique for ghosts. Tianmu, is there a container in your space that can be closed? Asked Shuichi Mayumi, in front of the Black Master. Tianmu lowered his head and pondered for a moment, then took out a beautiful ceramic vase from the space, and took out a completely mismatched leak lid. He tried it, and found that it could be stitched together without leaving a gap. Okay, it's up to you. The Black Jedi's eyes watched in horror as Shuichi Mayumi began to seal without saying a word, and some kind of power in his body was running instead of chakra, condensing. Seal the ghost seal method. True Baoshiu pressed his palm on Heiju's body one by one, and the surface of the latter's skin suddenly began to spread a string of incantations, and then emitted a golden light. The next moment, Heiju's entire person was included in that vase. Tianmu was quick and immediately sealed the lid. True Gongzhihuyi used the yin and yang escape ability provided by the reincarnation eye, and then added an external seal to the vase, and this time the black definitely couldn't come out. Put it back in your space. The best result for the Black Jedi's sealing container to stay in the space of Tianmu, even if he breaks the seal, he can't escape, and even if he is really banished to the broken space that no one knows about after Tianmu dies. Until death. Chapter 101. Spiritism, Outer Dao Golem. Boom. The huge Outer Dao Golem was instantly located in the huge cavern. Its body was like dead wood, there were 10 protruding pillars behind it, and the 9 eyes on its face were tightly closed. This is the Outer Path Golem, the shell of the 10 tails. Chaijin has a 9-tailed chakra on his body, Suanwu has a 3-tailed chakra, and the 6-tailed human pillar force is in Wuyan village, and he is also half a tailed beast dominated by him. There are 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8 tails left, exactly 6. It shouldn't be much of a problem to let the 12 ghost moons go in pairs to arrest them. True Gongxiu glanced at the 12 ghost moons around him who were waiting to fall, and made a decision at the moment. He first taught all the upper strings his modified ghost seal method, and then divided them into 6 groups, each consisting of an upper string and a lower string. Mirror Shadow, Beast, you 2 go catch 1. Suanwu, Liugzhu, you catch the 2 tails. Kiriheim, Hell Thunder, you catch the 4 tails. White Fang, Red Kite, you catch the 5 tails. Momiji, Ghost Crow, you catch the 7 tails. Don't be a god, Renblade, I'll leave it to you. Although there is a saying that the more tails, the stronger the strength, but the real Bao Shuichi feels that except for the 8 or 9 tails, the others are just a group of foils. So he specially sent the strongest other gods to deal with the 8 tails, and it would be good to let the Renblade give him a hand. At this point, the candidates for the capture of the 6-tailed beasts have all been decided, and the next step is to unfold the plan. The country of sand is still full of yellow sand. Jingying straightened the hat on her head with her hand, and looked at the beast who was full of energy and invited her to run with her passionately, with a drop of cold sweat flowing down her head. I really don't understand what this guy is thinking in his head. Can he also sit in the seat of the lower string one? Arriving at Cheyenne village, the dilapidated scene in front of him made the corners of Jingying's mouth twitch. It would have to be a fight between 2-tailed beasts at the gate of the village to cause this kind of damage, right? It's hard to say whether the sand-hidden village still exists or not. The beast. Mirror Shadow suddenly spoke, let me see your youth, go and see where the 1-tailed human pillar force is. Although there was no expression on the Mirror Shadow's face, and his tone was like a stick reading, the beast readily agreed. No problem. And vanished as a green shadow. It's good that there is a lower string to play the hand, otherwise we would have to find the dawn. The mirror rubbed his temples with a headache, and he was not idle. Under the threat of red gold, the entire village of Cheyenne shrank, and the size of the village doubled, and only the desolation on the periphery could be seen from the outside. But as the mirror's shadow deepened, the aura of living people she perceived became stronger and stronger, and she had obviously entered the real sand-hidden village. As for how to pinpoint a human pillar from the crowd? She took out a picture scroll and unfolded it to look at it, and on it was a red-haired child with the word love on his forehead. This guy is the current one-tailed human pillar force. Then he looked at the tallest building in the village, and he must have found a clue to the power of a human pillar as long as he went there. Oh yes, I have to call it the beast. Although the brain is relatively tendonous, the combat effectiveness is still strong. It's not bad to let him change with the 4 generations of Kazekage, and the side effect of releasing the ultimate move is that he can't fight for a few days. Night. Luo Xia looked at the lonely man in the room through the glass, and there was no father's love for his child in his eyes, only endless vigilance. In his eyes, Yarrow is a container that could be broken at any moment. Through the wall, there was a noise outside the house. Luo Xia took a deep breath, walked quickly to the window, and only caught a glimpse of the bright fire of Cheyenne village. Oh no! Kazekage-sama! Is that monster again? Raksha frowned. The monster hadn't appeared in a while, and he thought the storm had passed. No, it's... This time a monster with a string carved into his eyes. Rosa slammed his fist into the wall, burning with rage. These monsters, are they really easy to bully in my sand-hidden village? Humph, can't you subdue that guy with tailed beast strength, can't you still subdue you? He immediately judged the strength level of the attacker, and he believed that he had the ability to manipulate the gold dust to control it. Then when the sun shines on the earth, burn it alive. Don't worry about my arrow, the 4th generation of Kazekage Raksha plans to fight in person. Hey! Raksha suddenly sensed something, and turned to look at the end of the hallway, where there was nothing. The ominous feeling is gone. Delusion, the screams of civilians outside woke him up, and he ignored the strange feeling and rushed to the battlefield. I was almost discovered. After Luo Xia left, the mirror shadow appeared, and she felt the disadvantage of not having a heavenly purpose, and she was already thinking about whether to make a pair of white eyes by herself. In the previous battle of Konoha, all the people who died were the Hyuga family, and all the white eyes self-destructed. Those Hyuga clans ran away. Let me see where the human pillar is. Mirror. Walked straight to my room and looked at the red-haired child through the round glass on the door, a smile on her lips. Suddenly, there was a sound of footsteps at the end of the hallway, and the mirror shadow's face changed, and he escaped into the cascading space. When Shinobu arrived, all he saw was an empty hallway. Fortunately, they seem to be only guarding the pillar force of my arrow, and they are not aware of the existence of the mirror. Then push the door in the stacked space, and then transfer yourself to the same coordinates in the real space. The figure of the mirror shadow silently appeared behind my arrow, with the seal on his hand. Seal the ghost seal method. She wanted to preemptively seal the tailed beast in the body of the human pillar force and make it incapacitated, but she was stopped by the sudden sand barrier. At the same time, I looked back, revealing his hollow and terrifying eyes. Reacting instantly, the mirror pulled me into the cascading space before Iaro could fight back, and the ninjas guarding outside didn't notice that Iaro had disappeared without a trace. Entering the cascading space, Mirror Shadow first used the ban to ban Iroh's ability to control sand, making it impossible for him to defend himself. Immediately, before he was about to go berserk, he quickly used the seal and forcibly stuffed Xiaozhiru, whose tail was exposed, into Iroh's body. After that, it was much easier to deal with my Iroh, a person with no combat power, and he fainted with a knife. Taking advantage of the chaos, I secretly took my love Luokong to leave the sand-hidden village. And in Cheyenne village, the blue beast and the fourth generation of Wind Shadow Luo Shat are still fighting hotly. Looking at his high-spirited appearance, Jing Ying is embarrassed to interrupt his imperial city PK. Anyway, as soon as the door of death opened, Luo Sha couldn't even stop his kick. As a result, the blue beast that was playing well didn't realize that it had been thrown in the sand-hidden village by the winding. Chapter 102. The Land of Thunder, Union Village. In an empty underground space, the detonation charms detonated one after another, and countless rebels slid down to block the entrance. The three of them looked at each other and confronted each other without saying a word. In charge of capturing the two-tailed brigade is the three-tailed human pillar force Sun Yu, and the drift snow who is good at using ice. A smile tugged at the corner of Yujito's mouth, and she was about to say something, but then a snowflake fell on her. When I looked up, I saw that snowflakes began to fall in the enclosed underground space without warning. Her body was frozen in pain, and she suddenly noticed that the snowflakes that had fallen on her body had begun to freeze, plugging the reputation of the two Yama people. I'm going to kill you. Leaving down a cruel word, she fell on all fours. Her body gradually changed into the appearance of two tails and brigades, and in an instant, a blue cat demon appeared in front of the two. Lord Sun Yu, it's up to you. Liuxu turned her head to look at Sun Yu and bowed slightly. She came this time to assist Sun Yu. The war between the two pillars does not seem to have a room for her to intervene. Sun Yu replied lightly, and at the same time began to turn into a tailed beast, and a small three-tailed isofu appeared in front of the second tail. The two of them were about the same size, and their bodies alone took up almost the entire underground space. Drifting Snow retreated to the corner and protected herself with ice crystals on three sides, while she began to pinch people with her blood ghost technique. The battle between the tailed beasts is much simpler. Basically you slap me and I have a tail, and occasionally put two ninjutsu. But this occasional ninjutsu is enough to completely cover the terrain. This underground space was opened by two small-tailed beasts in less than 2 minutes, and the building on top was directly blasted open by the fireball of the brigade. Under this terrain, the combat capabilities of Mio Isofu have been greatly increased. He arched his whole body, the heavy carapace behind his back wrapped around his body, rolling back and forth like a wheel. The huge body of the two-tailed brigade could not dodge attacks in such a small space, and could only be ruthlessly crushed. The snow in the sky was still falling, and Futai's body was condensed into frost piece by piece, and she felt that her thinking was gradually slowing down. Water escape, water chaos wave. Several water escape ninjas created by flowing snow performed water escape ninjutsu at the same time, and the giant pit they were in was quickly filled with water. This is not good news for the two tails, but it is a good idea for the three birds. A tail was pumped over, and the thorny tail directly made the cat demon dizzy and plunged into the water. Before she could break free from the water, Sun Yu manipulated the three tails to launch the next round of attacks. After a few rounds of fighting, Yama finally ran out of strength and was forced to return to his human form, and he couldn't even deal with Sun Yu with a tailed beast, let alone a human form. In 3 or 2 clicks, she was beaten to the ground by the tailed beast-shaped Sun Yu, and with Liuxu watching from the side, she couldn't escape, and she couldn't get rid of the fate of being arrested. The four-tailed Monkey King was sealed in the body of Lao Ziai in Yunyan village. Old Purple has always had a conflict with the Earth Shadow, and often does not live in the village. The Misty Girl and Prison Thunder, who were in charge of capturing the Four Tails, searched for a long time before they found the four-tailed man Zhu Li Lao Ziai outside Yunyan village. They are arguably the strangest group, and the other groups are all winding leaders, and this group is in the opposite direction. Prison Lei is not happy that someone is manipulating him, and Wu Ji herself doesn't want to have anything to do with this kind of character of Prison Lei, so the position of the captain is replaced. Wu Ji has no opinion, and Prison Thunder is also cool, the best of both worlds. I've finally found you, four-tailed pillar force. The Prison Thunder moved his muscles and bones and walked towards Lao Ziai. Lao Zi's expression froze, and without saying a word, he immediately released the melting ninjutsu. Melt escape, burning river rock technique. Several large lava fireballs flew towards the hell thunder one after another, and the hell thunder instantly turned into invisible thunder and lightning, and quickly dodged the lava balls in a Z shape, and instantly came to Lao Ziyi. The fog queen in the back watched the lava ball that rushed in her face also turn into grey mist and attacked Lao Ziyi. Your Excellency's ninjutsu is certainly powerful, but if I transform at the beginning, how should you deal with it? Lao Ziyi gave his answer, as soon as the melting chakram mode opened, I was invincible. When the prison thunder that turned into thunder and lightning touched Lao Ziyi, who was covered in lava, his body immediately made a zig sound, and he was bounced away in the next second. This defense is too scary, isn't it? Prison thunder frowned, looking at the wind of decay that swept in. Under the effect of the power of decay, although Lao Zi's body was not affected, the high-temperature lava covered by his body began to emit white steam, and the temperature gradually dropped. Hey, this guy should call someone who knows how to deal with water. The figure of Suanwu came out of Prison Lei's brain, but it's a pity that that guy was arranged to deal with the second tail. Gritting his teeth, he can only bite the bullet, at least the fog will still have a negative impact on him. Lao Ziyi is more aggrieved now, ninjutsu can't beat any of them, he can only defend passively and wait for the opponent's transformation time to end. The upper wind is the upper wind after all, and the fog in the atomized state has not yet felt tired, and the prison thunder can't hold it for a while, and the electric light flashes away from Lao Ziyi and returns to the human form. Seeing this, Lao Ziyi immediately wanted to fight back, but was split solidly by a pillar of thunder light raised by the prison thunder, but fortunately, he was spared with the protection of the melted chakra. But Wu Ji found the right opportunity and urged the wind of decay to directly envelop Lao Ziyi, and under the double pressure, Lao Zi's melting chakra defense finally showed a trace of flaw. A wisp of decay took the opportunity to be sucked into his body. In an instant, the melting protection on Lao Zi's body was instantly lifted, and the whole person fell to his knees, as if he was more than 10 years old. His internal organs were weakening, and he could no longer fight with all his strength, and if he hadn't been trying to catch him alive, he wouldn't have been so simple now. Hell Lei smiled, a chirping thunder pill appeared in his hand, and he suddenly stepped forward and pressed it on Lao Zi's body. Lao Zi's face changed drastically in an instant, a mouthful of blood spit out of his mouth, and the whole person flew out upside down in an instant, lying on the ground unconscious. He's no longer combative, you're still beating him, aren't you afraid of being killed? Wu Ji complained, and when she stepped forward and saw that Lao Ziyi still had a breath, her heart relaxed. Prison Lei spread his hands, not looking reflective at all, and said with a smile, isn't there still a breath of air? Besides, I also have a spare hand, and the human pillar force should not die so easily. Then you come and carry this big man back. With that, Kurhim turned to leave. Hey, why me? Said Prison Thunder for a moment, dissatisfied. Because you almost killed your target just now, you should have atoned for your sins. After hearing this, Prison Lei was silent for a long time, but he still carried Lao Ziyi with one hand with great reluctance and followed behind Wu Ji. Chapter 103. The five-tailed Zhu Lihan is also a ninja in Uwane village, but the situation is similar to Lao Ziyi, they all belong to the Zhu Li who left the village without permission, and they are almost linked to the traitorous forbearance. In charge of the five tails are White Fang and Red Kite. After learning about Han's speed and strength, they specially mastered Han's route, waited for Han to enter an ambush, and then sneaked up to outflank him to prevent the other party from escaping. Perhaps because the kaleidoscope is not original, White Fang has not been able to open a full-body Susanangu so far, at most it can still only open a half-body Susanangu. But something is better than nothing, at least with Susanoo, the success rate of catching the five tails has increased a lot. At this moment, the two of them were squatting on the branches, waiting for the five-tailed man to embark on this path. It's coming. White Fang whispered, instantly activating his divine power and disappearing in place. The next moment, the red kite spat out a large amount of viscous and extremely corrosive acid from its mouth, and it fell from the sky above Han. Han frowned, white steam erupted from his feet, and he took a big leap backwards, quickly dodging the red acid that was as terrifying as magma. White Fang suddenly appeared behind him with Kamui, a hand on his body, and then Kamui launched again, and he entered the Kamui space with Han. As soon as he entered the Shinwei space, Han immediately relied on the blessing of steam to distance himself from White Fang, and was about to fight back, but an invisible slash fell on him. Click! The armor on his body was directly split open with a large gap. Realizing that he couldn't waste any more time, he launched a complete tailed beast transformation. In an instant, a snow-white five-tailed monster that looked like a dolphin and a horse appeared in the Shinwei space. It raised its front hooves and tried to stomp on the White Fangs with its hooves, but a layer of blue chakra emerged from the White Fangs. A skeleton was formed in an instant, blocking the hoof's attack. But the formation of Susanoo did not stop, and then the muscles, armor. Seeing that the attack was blocked, Gu was not stunned, and immediately lowered his head and slammed into the White Fang's Susanoo with the double horns on the top of his head. Immediately after, Susanoo actually stretched out his hands and tightly grasped the sharp horns of the five tails, and the strength of the two sides was comparable. Kamui. The place where the five tails were suddenly distorted in space, and seeing this, the five tails could only be forced to take the initiative to distance themselves from the White Fangs, in order to avoid Kamui. Susanoo suddenly appeared in his hand two huge shuriken, the power of divine power attached to it, and then, thrown towards the five tails. Feeling the powerful spatial power contained in the shuriken, the five tails did not dare to slack off, and hurriedly opened their hooves to avoid the shuriken attack. But then, Susanoo, whose hands were wrapped in black lightning, appeared in front of it, and the god would land on Gu with unmistakable precision. Outside, the red kite who was left behind by the White Fangs was a little unhappy, but she could only wait for the result. White Fang didn't let her wait, and after a while, he dragged the unconscious Han out, but the current Han looked a little miserable. The seven tails are clear, and the human pillar force is the Fu of Takiyan village. As a small ninja village outside the five major countries, it actually has a tailed beast in its hands. No matter what the current situation in the village is, his ancestors must be full of gold. The ones in charge of the seven tails are Momiji and Oni Crow. These two guys have a narrow path, and they haven't said a word since they arrived in Takano country. Relations have fallen to freezing point. It was Momiji who took the lead in borrowing the mission to speak. The intelligence says that Takikure village is behind the waterfall. Then he turned to the huge ghost crow. If you want to go in, I'm afraid you'll have to become a soup chicken first. Gah! The crow hovered in the air and refused to come down. Momiji didn't say anything after hearing this, just nodded silently, opened the portrait of the seven-tailed Manzuli and glanced at it, squinted slightly, and his expression became gradually weird. This kid shouldn't have gone to ninja school yet, right? I don't really want to deal with children. Momiji rubbed his chin. Coward, coward, the voice of the ghost crow echoed in the air, causing Momiji to frown. Ghost crow, you are so energetic, why don't you go? Anyway, it's just a child, and it is impossible for a child to be killed by a child as a lower string. Go, go, go. The ghost crow finally landed, snatched the information from Momiji's hand with its claws, and flew towards the waterfall. Momiji didn't care about this, and even found a place to rest. If the human pillar is violently gone, then it will not be too late for the ghost crow to hold him and then make a move. It is rare to be leisurely. The ghost crow relied on its ability to fly to find another way, successfully entered the village of Taki, and released a large number of crow clones to find the target. But after a fruitless search, it changed its mind and directly used forceful means to attack the people of Taki's village, forcing Takishibu to appear with the young man's eye. The effect is also very fast, and the effect is even beyond the imagination of the ghost crow. For it is not the young man who comes out. It's the tailed beast seven-tailed Shijiki. Yes, the ninja of Takikoin village actually directly released the tailed beast in the human pillar force's body. Forced the human pillar force into a violent tailed beast mode. Immediately, a tailed beast cannon hit the ghost crow, and this cannon directly wiped out more than 30 crow clones, but Takikoin village itself also suffered heavy losses. Boom! Hearing the sound inside Takihide village, Momiji stood up and quickly rushed to Takihide village. The ghost crow really got away with it. There's a reason you can only stay on the bottom string. The seven tails flapped their wings and flew away, and were about to attack the ghost crow in the air, when several thorns suddenly broke through the ground and soared straight into the sky, entangling the seven tails in the sky. Shuichi Mayumi asked Momiji and the ghost crow to catch the seven-tailed with the ability to fly, and naturally he had his reasons, but he couldn't let the tailed beast escape. Otherwise, God knows when such a flying-tailed beast will be found on this continent. What are you going to do? I can single it out. The ghost crow was furious, and although his heart was empty, his mouth was still first class. I didn't know that Momiji didn't care about him at all, and his left ear went in and out of his right ear, and then he controlled the thorns to pierce the seven tails in the air. This seven-tailed ghost crow has no idea where to start, and it was solved by Momiji in a few minutes, and it was a completely one-sided battle. Seeing this, the ghost crow fell silent. Once again, it was struck in the heart. It and the autumn leaves, obviously it came first. But why? Is that all it can do here? Hey, ghost crow, you didn't even do anything to deal with the tailed beast, and it makes sense for you to bring the human pillar force, right? The ghost crow instantly carried a company and looked at the red leaves. Apparently I lured the seven tails out. Do you think I can't? Okay, count yourself ruthless. Chapter 104. The eight-tailed bull ghost, the human pillar force is Kirabi of Union Village. The person in charge, don't be a god in a chaotic blade. It is also the last-tailed beast that needs to be caught. This is Yunli Gorge. Best Engine sat cross-legged at the top of the mountain, looking at the silent canyon ahead, thinking about how to catch the eight tails. The eight tails human pillar power is already a mature combat power, coupled with the human pillar force's natural resistance to illusions. I don't know if his pupil technique farewell to the heavenly god is effective. After all, other gods are not ordinary illusions. In short, let's take other gods as a usable means. Beside him, Renblade, who had nothing to do but couldn't calm down, was wandering around all the time, constantly complaining about the steadiness of the other gods. Bishinjin looked at the blade and compared his own combat power with the combat power of the eight tails. Chaos Blade is not weak, and he has an advantage against large creatures. If the Thunder Shadow finds it, he is not afraid, he still has a complete body. Although it won't last long, it can at least deal with Thunder Shadow and eight tails. Suddenly, Bishinjin stood up and patted the dust on his body. Let's go, Chaos Blade, eight tails capture plan, begin. Oh, is it finally going to start? Renblade turned his head as he listened, his eyes burning, and he couldn't wait to do it. After a day of tailed beast cannon training, Xi Kirabi was already exhausted, strolling in the Yunli Gorge, and was about to go back to rest. Suddenly, he sensed a slight tremor under the ground, and jumped into the air, where several giant blades suddenly popped out. If he hadn't felt the vibrations, or had been slow to react, he might have been skewered into a barbecue by now. What people? Under the moonlight, two figures loomed, slowly approaching him with steady steps. It wasn't until the other party walked closer that Kirabi could see the face of the visitor through the dark curtain. I don't know. Totally strangers. He had never heard of this kind of blood inheritance limit that manipulated the blade. The blade that had just emerged from the ground gave him a great shock, and although it was two unfamiliar faces, he did not underestimate his opponent. Immediately pulled out 8 knives and made a posture of 8 knives. Bai Tianchen also pulled out the ninja knife on his body, and without knowing the details of the other party, he didn't want to directly use Susanangu to attract Yun Ninja. On the Chaos Blade side, it was even simpler, and 2 blades with a cold light popped out from the palms of both hands, crawling with explosive spells. Several blades also popped out of the joints of his body, and his whole body was wrapped in blades. It looks much scarier than the 8-knife Kiribi. The sword light and sword shadow were immediately activated, and the collision was accompanied by a series of explosions. Although Kiribi was extremely proficient in the 8-blade stream, he still couldn't withstand the combined attack of the 2 people, and the 2 in front of him were not weak. Anyway, he's a ghost, and these scratches can be healed in a second. Kiribi's whole body is full of blades, and the chaotic blades are not the same, and the tactics he uses to hurt the enemy by injuring 1000 and self-inflicting 800 do make Kiribi 1 head and 2 bigger. Suddenly, Kiribi's whole figure seemed to be bound by invisible threads, thin black threads that glittered in the moonlight. Oops! The light was too dim to notice this. Kiribi frowned, and a red-tailed beast cloak appeared on his body, and the thin thread that bound him was broken in an instant. Finally borrowed the power of the tailed beast. The voice of the other god came from behind him, and Kiribi subconsciously stabbed his sword behind him, and then turned his head. What catches the eye is the scarlet kaleidoscope riding wheel eye of the other gods. Don't be a god, launch! You are my most proud subordinate, and the purpose of infiltrating Union Village for decades is to become the 8 Tails Pillar Force and win the 8 Tails power for me. Now, your mission is successfully accomplished. It's time to leave Union Village with me and return to the embrace of the Ghost King. Kiribi's brain was invaded in an instant, his consciousness was modified, and he froze in place, deaf to the sound of the cow ghost in his body. Hey, wake up! The bull ghost tried to disrupt the flow of chakra in Kiribi's body and crack the illusion, but it didn't work. Seeing that the consciousness modification of the other gods was about to succeed, it couldn't care so much, and immediately grabbed control of the body. In the outside world, after Kiribi was hit by the other heavenly gods, he only stiffened for a moment, and the tailed beast chakra on his body suddenly swelled. In an instant, the 8-tailed bull ghost appeared in the world. Facing the other gods in front of him, he waved his tail behind him and slapped it heavily. I obviously controlled him with other gods. Bishanjin dodged the tentacle attack of the 8 tails, and muttered in his mouth, could it be that the current consciousness is the 8-tailed cow ghost? Bai Tianchen retreated, but the chaotic blade met it. He plunged his hands into the ground, and countless sharp blades pierced out under the 8 tails in an instant, not only piercing its tail, but also surrounding it entirely. But the 8 tails just swept their tails, and several sharp blades were directly broken by the waist, and the destroyed blades turned into dust and dissipated between heaven and earth in the next moment. The other gods watched the duel between the 8 tails and the chaotic blade from the sidelines, and the movement caused by the tailed beast was probably heard clearly in Union Village. In other words, Thunder Shadow is about to arrive at the horse. It can't be delayed any longer, let's use that trick. Just after breaking through the encirclement of the chaotic blade, a black shadow obscured its vision. When Yao looked up, he almost broke out in a cold sweat. Susanoo, a complete body whose size surpassed the mountain peak, was flapping its wings and standing in the air, taking on the posture of a martial god. This Susanoo instantly reminded him of the fear of being half-dominated by Senju Tsuruma and Uchiha. Unexpectedly, now, he actually saw this martial god power again from other people. When he was stunned, the other gods controlled Susanangu to move first. Hasaka no Magata. Susanang threw the green Megatama like a shuriken, and the series of Megatama hit Yao all of them. The 8 tails were unavoidable, and the whole thing fell backwards to the ground, producing a thick white smoke. Immediately after, the spiral sword in Susa's hand spun and fell, and with a sky-high momentum, it approached the Yejao facing gate. Damn! In a panic, Yao wanted to cut off his own tail and escape, but when he subconsciously looked up, he accidentally looked directly into the scarlet eyes of the other gods. I didn't expect that the 8 tails would take the initiative to meet his eyes, and don't be happy. In an instant, the kaleidoscope illusion was activated. The 8 tails froze in place. This moment of stalemate made it no longer able to try to escape in any way, and could only resist this blow of the spiral sword. Commanding the blades to carry Kiribi, they quickly fled the scene of the crime. When Thunder Shadow arrived, he only saw the terrain that had been greatly damaged, and Kiribi, who was nowhere to be seen. Then all the 9-tailed beasts have been collected. Trugong Shuichi sat in front of the outer Dao Golem and muttered, "In a few days, the captured tailed beasts have been sent over one after another. It's the 6 tails of Wuyan village who specially sent someone to get it, although it was a little resistant, but it was finally in hand. Next, when the last 3-tailed beasts arrive, you can start extracting the tailed beasts. It is only one step away from becoming a 10-tailed human pillar force and mastering the power of the 6 realms." True Baoshiu clenched his fists, and at the thought of gaining the power of the 10 tails, he didn't want to wait any longer. 2 figures flashed through the hole, and it was the 6-tailed human pillar force that was thrown to the ground. The ghost crow was the first to come back with his flying ability, and then he sent him to invite the 6-tailed human pillar force over. Now looking at the 6-tailed human pillar force who was unconscious and had multiple scratches all over his body, True Bao Shuiqi found that he really looked down on the ghost crow. A bird is still a bird, even if it becomes a ghost. It's just 8 tails and 2 tails. Chapter 105. In the dark cavern, the 12 ghost moons were scattered all over the place, and they all looked at the huge 10-tailed body. Now that the people have arrived, the next step is the process of extracting the tailed beast chakra. Start with 1 tail and end with 9 tails, one by one in order. Shuichi Shinbo ordered the 6 upper strings to stand on a few fingers of the 10 tails, and now he wants to use the ghost chi to replace the chakra and unleash the 9 seals of the phantom dragon. The first to be caught by the lower string is a human pillar force, I love Luo, and the target is Shao Tsuru in his body. I saw that several upper strings began to urge the ghost chi in the body at the same time, and gradually reached the same frequency as the power of the true Bao Shuiqi. The outer Dao Golem slowly opened its mouth, and several blue dragons flew out of its mouth, biting the eye arrow on the ground. The same method was used on the second tail. It took a few days to finally seal the 1 tail and 2 tails completely, and the next thing was Suan Yu. The eyes of all the ghosts fell on Suan Yu, who was not only a human pillar force, but also a ghost, and at the same time a wind. He didn't speak, but just jumped off the fingers of the outer Dao Golem, and the blue beast as the lower string temporarily filled his place. The human pillar force is extracted, and the tailed beast will die, but that is only for humans. Neither Shinbo Shuiqi nor Zhenwu himself thought that he would die because the tailed beast was withdrawn. But whether he can sit firmly in the winding seat after being removed from the tailed beast, it's hard to say. Feeling a few malicious glances from the lower string, Suan Yu's brows furrowed. The power of the 9-tailed beasts is now all in the body of the outer path golem, and Shuiqi True Bao specially chose the night to complete the union of the 9-tailed beasts. I saw that the outer path golem opened its 9 eyes, and instantly covered its head with its hands and rose from the ground. The cave shook violently and almost collapsed. In an instant, the earth shook, and a monster with 10 tails appeared on the ground. With the power of the Eye of Reincarnation, Shuichi Makumi can easily control the resurrected 10 tails. Flying to the top of the 10 tails, he did not hesitate to launch the seal. The top of the 10 tails head instantly generated a huge suction, inhaling the entire 10 tails and condensing into a white and smooth ball. The ball hung high in the sky for a few moments, and cracks appeared with a click. Trugong Shuiqi's figure reappeared, and at this moment, his body was covered with a layer of white 10-tailed shell, and he looked like a big barrel of wood. Feeling the abundant power in his body, he slowly opened his mouth and exhaled a breath of turbidity. His ultimate goal was achieved, but he was not happy, but worried. He didn't know if he would be able to overcome the weakness of the sun and become the last ultimate creature by becoming the 10 Tails Pillar Force. There are still 3 hours before the sun rises. The answer is about to be revealed. It's another day, the sky is just white, and the sun is rising. Gong Shuichi stood at the entrance of the cave, looking at the sunlight that was not dazzling, and his heart was full of thoughts. Now he didn't rely on the power of the dragon vein to stand in the sun. Although it was only a faint amount of sunlight, it still made his perennially cold body feel a trace of warmth. Truly mastered the power of the 10 tails, and became the power of the 10 tails. Relying on the power of the Ghost King in his body, he forcibly suppressed the characteristics of those large barrels of wood that appeared on the surface of his body. At first glance, he is just an ordinary human being, and no one knows what is hidden in his body. His consciousness seemed to drift between heaven and earth, feeling everything. The 10-tailed human pillar force can really resist the exposure of the sun, and now even if he walks in the sun, he will not feel any discomfort. The goal he wants has finally come to an end. Gong Xiu turned around and looked at the 12 ghost moons who had been working in the cave for dozens of days, his eyes narrowed slightly. The purpose has been achieved, is there any need for these ghosts to stay? After a moment's thought, he sighed. Forget it, the 12 ghost months can be regarded as doing their best, so don't unload the mill and kill the donkeys and deprive them of their lives. You're free. With that, he lifted all restrictions on the 12 ghost moons, and now they were no longer controlled by the true Bao Shiyi. Of course, if he wants to, he can regain this right at any time. As for the rest of the ghosts, forget it, the major ninja villages will deal with it. Konoha can study the ghost seal method so quickly, and other ninja villages must be able to do it too. He didn't have to bother to help the humans destroy the other weak demons as well. Subsequently, Shuichi Mayumi fell into the ruins of Konoha. After that war, the remnants of Konoha abandoned the destroyed Konoha village, and they didn't know where they had gone. Maybe the land of the Fire Nation will be divided among other countries in the future. With the route he remembered, Shuichi walked to a 2-story building that had been destroyed for the most part. Chinese restaurants, they have all been destroyed like this. After all, he survived the most difficult crossing with this craft, and he was still glad that he learned such a one-handed cooking skill. It's time to pay tribute to the dead restaurant.